2011 was
12
years ago. You're welcome. As I grow older and wrinklier, I bear witness to a whole new generation of gamers who don't remember ye old times quite the way I do. Sure, you newer crowd know about Dark Souls, but many of you probably weren't around when it was in its heyday. From Software had already been around for a while and had their fans through series like Armored Core and Kingsfield, but Dark Souls was the game that put them on the world stage. Originally a spiritual successor to the much more experimental, far less polished, but no less imaginative and ambitious Demon Souls, Dark Souls was an expansion on that prototype of a formula that became an instant classic, creating ripples across the entire gaming industry still felt to this day. So influential was From Software's magnum opus that it birthed an entire subgenre of games inspired by it, and these days it's hard to browse Steam at all without tripping over titles carrying that ever vague tag of Souls-like. And yes, you probably knew this coming in here already, it's pretty hard. Dark Souls' difficulty has become something of a meme over the years, to the entire series' detriment in my opinion, not from a gameplay perspective necessarily, but from a marketing one. To the gaming public and gaming media at the time, Dark Souls was a trial by fire only for the most hardcore of hardcore gamers, an oasis of brutality in a desert of games that had become too hand-holdy, over-tutorialized, and oversimplified. And sure, there's some truth to that. This was not a game that was tripping over itself to please you or keep your attention. It presented itself to you, expected you to learn it, get better at it, and handle all the exploring of everything it had to offer on your own. Well, mostly, but we'll get to that later. It was a challenge, especially for the time, but good lord did people oversell that one aspect of it. If you'd only ever heard about it, you would have assumed it was just a rage game in the same vein as I Wanna Be the Guy, just with a bigger budget. Marketing for the game certainly didn't help. For God's sake, the title of its eventual PC port was the Prepare to Die edition. Come on now. And oh boy did this come with its fair share of elitism. You couldn't dislike Dark Souls without being called a scrubby casual, unfit to enjoy its magnificence, and thus did one of the most notorious phrases meme its way into pop culture: get good. Something uttered to anyone who expressed displeasure or frustration with the game, invalidating any and all criticism by placing the blame solely on the person's skill or lack thereof. Personal taste? A legitimate flaw with the game? Pfft, nah, you're just bad, boy, cry about it. I should clarify, I love this game to death, but this mentality and focus on this one aspect bothered me then, and still does. There was much more to Dark Souls that made it great than it just being hard. The level design, the art direction, the music, the world, the story, there was so much raw love and effort put into it that I felt went underappreciated at the time. All that's certainly not underappreciated now, hindsight is 2020 and all that, but there's still plenty about it that I don't hear mentioned enough. So I decided to revisit it and see just how well it holds up to that nostalgic memory. I've already gone back and played it many times before in the past, but I never really approached it with a critical eye, and been more willing to admit what it does well and what it doesn't. Before we set off on this journey, I should mention that I'll be playing the remastered version, because despite all my problems with it, it is the most stable way to play Dark Souls on the PC. The original port was notoriously bad, and trying to record this game off my original PlayStation 3 version was always a minor nightmare, since the console's hardware never seemed to play nice with things like Elgato. It is unfortunate though, because the remastered version, while it is still basically the exact same game and keeps the vast majority of it untouched, makes a few changes to the visuals that I don't agree with. I'll get into that more in a bit though, because this intro is pushing 5 minutes by this point and we got a long road ahead of us. So pack your bags and gather around the bonfire, kids. We're gonna be here a while. Before we head out though, a few ground rules to lay. 1. I'll be taking the intended path through the game as best I can from beginning to end. This means no master key. Sorry, old friend. We'll be going with black firebombs instead. 2. I'll be playing a strength faith build since I was looking to try something new for this playthrough, so we're starting cleric. 3. To the very best of my abilities, I'm going to try and do every single NPC's quest line to completion, so layers at the very least. This does mean that I summoned NPCs for the boss fights in this video. I'm still not 100% sure if you really need to finish some of their quests, but I just wanted to be sure. Besides, I needed sunlight medals, so at the very least I was summoning Solaire. Also, I'll say right now, I didn't get far with Griggs. I kinda forgot about them after saving them. Whoops. And finally, 4. I'm not going to go super in-depth into the game's lore. Dark Souls is famous for being the fucking iceberg of video game stories once you start delving into it, and to explain it in detail would require me taking at least a 2-week crash course on VaatiVidya, and this video has taken long enough. There's plenty of other people on YouTube who've covered it far better than I ever could, so just go look it up for yourself if you're interested. That said, I will at least be giving my own summary of what I do know as we go through where it's relevant. This isn't guaranteed to be accurate, but I'll try my best. So, with all of that out of the way, we're in prison. Off to a good start. More specifically, we're in the Undead Asylum, a facility built to corral humans that became afflicted with the curse of undeath. Undead will eventually turn what's called hollow, which reduces them to a shambling corpse that attacks just about anything still alive. And one undead here happens to be yourself, wasting away in seclusion before a very helpful knight drops a corpse with a key through the ceiling. Why he couldn't just drop the key and not the whole ass body, I don't know, but we take what we can get in these situations. Thus begins the game's tutorial, and it handles it in a pretty unintrusive way, leaving the actual tutorializing to messages written on the ground that are entirely optional but give you the basics to get you going. They also demo one of the multiplayer aspects of Dark Souls right away: messages. If playing online, people can leave messages for other people on the ground using preset bits and pieces of sentences. You'll find messages that are legitimately helpful, and others that are just people being gremlins. We'll come back to this later. For now, we make our way up to the game's first bonfire. Bonfires became the icon of the entire Dark Souls series. Even Sekiro and Bloodborne had their own versions of these things. From here, you can rest, level up, and later on, store, repair, and improve equipment. They're the checkpoints of the game, and let me tell you, back in the day, after carefully inching my way through an area, being slowly drained of resources, clutching my souls and humanity to my chest, finding one of these things was always a huge wash of relief. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, luckily, I'm prepared for Okay, so yeah, that's usually what happens when you get careless in Dark Souls. The game tends to take offense to that. Kids, this is what we call hubris. Thankfully, through the holy power of explosives, we prevail and move on. Now, normally you'd run away from that thing, grab your shield, weapon, and other gear, then go back and fight it again to cap off the tutorial, but it's nice that the game gives you the option to just beat it right away. Even better, you're rewarded with the Demon's Hammer if you do. This is one of the many good things about Dark Souls. It's pretty open-ended. You can approach almost any situation however you want with the tools the game gives you. All it asks is that you get from point A to point B. How you get there is up to you. Sure, you can go through the tutorial in the intended path, or you can bomb the asylum demon so hard there's now a smoking crater where it's supposed to be. It's your choice. This is expanded on later as you get the ability to summon allies for boss fights, get more weapons, spells, and consumables. I never felt like I was forced into playing a specific way or the right way, just that the game expected me to get good at the fundamentals, which thankfully are pretty simple to wrap your head around. Here's our prison break buddy, and they're dying already because of course they are. But at least he gives us some crucial direction in his final moments.
There is an old saying in my family: thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the undead asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know.
Oddly specific familial saying, along with the key to the big-ass door and the Estus Flask, the single most important item in the entire game. This is your primary healing item and it refills every time you rest at a bonfire. Starts with 5 uses, resting in a bonfire gives you 5, but you can sacrifice humanity to kindle that bonfire, and from then on, it'll give you more. The Souls series always seem to change the healing system from game to game. This is still my preferred way, though lately they've settled on a similar system with find key item, use key item on whatever your flask adjacent item is that time, and get more uses of it that way. It works and there's nothing wrong with that, but I still prefer the first game's way. Though admittedly it can suck if you get to a new bonfire with no humanity to kindle it and you're stuck with only 5 uses. That does sting a bit. Ow! Ooh, ankles! Anyway, after getting the rest of our gear, we push past the big doors, waltz right up this pathway, and... Bird up! Now, I've been mostly fun and jokes up to this point, so let me dial it back and go slightly serious for just a little bit. I love Firelink Shrine. There's many reasons, and I'm not entirely sure where to start. This is where you're always 100% no bullshit safe, as long as you don't go this way. You can spend as much time as you want just hanging out here and nothing bad happens. No timed quests that run out if you idle for too long. No enemies that roam around until they find you here. Nothing. It's very similar to the Nexus in Demon's Souls, but narratively, I think it's stronger, because it doesn't just serve a gameplay purpose of being a hub. It's part of the entire world. The land of Lordran is winding and vast, but almost all of it branches out from this one spot, and some of it loops back. It's where most of the NPCs you meet end up one way or another, and as you progress, you start seeing more and more familiar faces just wind up here. The further you go, it feels more like a home, reinforced by that somber but peaceful music that plays every time you visit it, and slowly fades away every time you leave. This is the only place in the game that has a consistent musical backing, by the way. With only one other exception that we won't see for a while, the rest of Dark Souls only has music in boss fights or important cutscenes. It creates this unique feeling when you wind a corner and slowly you start to hear that familiar melody just humming away. Firelink is important to the entire experience because it makes the world feel connected, even if it doesn't lead to every zone. The areas it does lead to are often the paths you need to take to reach those places further away, like needing to go through the catacombs to reach the Tomb of the Giants. A minor note, but the use of depth of field makes the world feel massive, even if its main technical use is to hide texture limitations and such. Although speaking of visuals, before we continue, I did mention that I had some problems with the remastered version. They're small things, but I feel like they mess with the visual presentation of Dark Souls overall. The sparkle that marks items used to look more cloudy and slowly fade away when you pick them up. Now it's more like a flickering ball that immediately blips out of existence. And I was going to say that the remastered version looks a bit darker than the original, but I don't know, looking at them back to back, I might just be remembering that wrong, though the remastered version is definitely doing something different. I think it might be using less bloom and the color palette might be a bit more faded. I couldn't tell you exactly what the remastered version is doing differently, but my brain prefers the old one for some reason. And most aggravatingly, to me at least, the bonfires in the remastered version I would consider to be a direct downgrade from the originals. I mean, sure, they look like a bonfire, nothing wrong with them, but the original bonfire looked more ethereal and magical, with tendrils of fire-like energy wrapping around and reaching above the coiled sword. It's more visually interesting. This is a problem I have with the bonfires from the rest of the series. They left this original magical look behind, and I feel like that was a mistake. I am probably the only person in the world who cares about this, but I do, goddammit. There's likely other visual changes from the original version that I didn't notice, but those were the ones that stood out to me the most, and the ones that actively bothered me. I'm bringing this all up now because once we get started, I'm not going to have a good chance to later, I guarantee you that. So back on topic. Firelink is immensely important to the whole of Dark Souls, and I needed to give it the proper appreciation it deserves. So now that I've had my moment of nerding out, want to see me get swarmed by skeletons? Now's a good time to talk about dying. I made fun of the Prepare to Die edition, but death is a major part of Dark Souls. You die, you pop back out of the last bonfire you rested at, and you lose all your souls and humanity. You can get them all back if you return to where you died and pick up this mark on the ground. However, if you die again before reaching that point, it's all gone forever. Carrying a bunch of souls on you at once is often an unnecessary risk unless you're saving up for something big. Spend it while you got it is a harsh lesson most Souls players have to learn the hard way. Now, while there are 3 pathways we can go from Firelink, the way we really should go is up. Oh yeah, there's also a dragon. The Undead Burg is the game's intended starting area, and it certainly feels like it. Enemies are slow, don't hit all that hard, and sometimes go completely catatonic. Okay. In terms of overall enemy difficulty, the Burg is an extension of the tutorial. However, the game has taken you off the rails and you're free to explore around. It's worth doing so too, since even though the burg is relatively straightforward, there's some hidden paths and extra items tucked away out of immediate view. And despite the fact that enemies are easy, getting cocky when more than one is attacking can still get you in trouble. We meet our first merchant here, but we're really only interested in one item from them, the residence key. We're gonna need that for an NPC quest later. Aside from that, he sells some basic weapons, armor, the yellow soapstone which you use to leave messages, and the dried finger, a new item added in the remastered version. What does it do? Hold your horses, we'll get to that. In addition to merchants, the burg introduces the idea of enemy ganks to you as well, but in very easy to see coming ways. The hollows here get up very slowly and take a while to start attacking when they do. The entire time, they're vulnerable to attacks, so it's not hard to kill them before they have a chance to swing. You can even get the drop on them if you're vigilant enough. And this is where the idea of the item gank is supposed to be shown, where you pick up an item and then enemies that were in hiding suddenly spring on you. But I'm so familiar with this whole game by this point and where most of the ambushes are that eventually I had to purposefully fall into an item gank just to get some decent footage of it. Yep, I guess I'm just too good at the video game these days. How tragic. Tagging this bonfire, we make our way across the bridge, throw a lot of unspoken curse words at the annoying guys throwing bombs down at us, and look at this fight here. You walk into the room and two guys immediately attack you. After a few seconds of tussling, a third enemy will join the fight, but the game makes it very obvious. If you don't see the Hollow Knight entering the room, it loudly kicks in the door to alert you. This is yet another lesson. Sometimes additional enemies will just burst out of hiding and you'll need to adapt on the fly, but again, the way it's shown to you here is very forgiving and easy to see coming. I should note that being this familiar with all the trap locations makes my viewpoint very biased, so take my word with a moderately proportioned helping of salt. Nothing personnel, kid. I'm so fucking badass. Ow. At least we get to take our revenge on those firebomb douchebags. And on that note, it's time we talk about one of my other favorite things about Dark Souls, the ragdolls. What? Well, I wish I could have seen where he fell. Hands down, cards on the table, Dark Souls 1 has the best ragdolls of the entire series. They attain levels of jank surpassed only by the likes of Skyrim. I'm not entirely sure what kind of law of physics these ragdolls are working off of, but for whatever reason, they react so violently to your character's movements. It's been the source of endless entertainment for me every time I replay this game. With our newly acquired residence key, we commit some casual larceny and head on our merry old way. My guy throws like a wimp. However, taking a small detour down these stairs, we get this ominous-looking interruption. The placement of the Black Knight here is great. This thing is entirely optional, is way out of your way, and it's not even facing you as you approach. Fighting it is 100% your choice, and amongst all the slow, easy-to-digest lessons the game has taught you up to now, this one is hard and fast. It's a great little curveball since the whole game has been so not that up to that point. And if you hadn't died already, that's probably death number 1 for many people. I wish there was a player death tracker like in Dark Souls 2, but specifically for this Black Knight. It's gotta be in the hundreds of thousands by now. Oh man, playing Spy be like. Round 2 goes much better, thankfully. Okay. I was in the wall. Makes sense. By the way, I'm so used to starting with the master key that I habitually go to try and open this door, even though I don't have it. Up the spiral stairs, one specific barrel hides a crystal lizard that we kill for some nice upgrade materials, and we make our way out onto the bridge. Nothing's out on the bridge just yet, but go a little further and... a sudden boss fight on a narrow bridge. While the fight itself is fairly straightforward, you've got limited elbow room to work with. However, upon entering the bridge, you'll most likely be shot at by 2 archers from above and behind you before you even get far enough to spawn the demon, prompting you to climb up and deal with them. Then, when the Taurus demon jumps you, you can still climb back up the platform at the start. While you're up there, it'll look up at you and, hey, this looks familiar. I wonder if... Yep! Or you can just wait up there and it'll jump up to join you, giving you a circular arena to fight it with a bit more room to dodge around. Explore, go slow, and more importantly, pay attention. These are the lessons Dark Souls is trying to teach you in this first area, and I'd say it teaches them fairly well. Together, those three concepts make up the basis for how you should approach any Souls game: cautious and attentive. Also, on a side note, for the purpose of recording, I had to turn this music off to add it in post later, and without music, this fight is very... pathetic sounding. There is nothing in these barrels. There will never be anything in these barrels. There never was anything in these barrels, and yet I will always break them every single time. Making our way from the bridge onto another bridge, we meet our next major NPC, Solaire of Astora. Alright, let's talk about Solaire. I don't think I need to tell you that when Dark Souls first came out, Solaire became a fan favorite almost immediately. People latched onto him, and of course, that signature phrase,
and engage in jolly cooperation,
has been a meme ever since. But there's more to Solaire than him just being a fun character with a kind of silly way of speaking. That's not the only reason people became so invested in him. You see, throughout Dark Souls, every NPC you meet, even the nice ones, all have their own agenda or are just performing a service for you. Hell, some even straight up betray you or just gradually reveal themselves to be complete pricks. Petrus! But Solaire is different. In a world devoid of liveliness and hope, Solaire stands out as the only true optimist you meet. He's jovial, confident, strong. Hell, he's more of a hero than you. He's a bit slow, but he's got the heart to make up for that. He's the OG Dark Souls himbo, but even that isn't everything. When you first meet Solaire, he gives you the white soapstone, which you use to lay down a summon signature to be summoned into other players' worlds and help them. Most people typically do this to team up on bosses, and in several instances, you can also summon Solaire to help in fights. There's a few other NPCs you can do that with as well, but out of everyone, Solaire doesn't help you just because it furthers his own goal. He just genuinely wants to help and enjoys the camaraderie. You're both chosen undead on the same journey as each other, so why not? With everything being so bleak, someone like Solaire is refreshing. It's very fitting that when you first see him, he's gazing off at the sun, its rays piercing the smog-like clouds and shining down on him. Yet, that can also be symbolic of ignorance and naivete, someone who hasn't yet caught on to the devastated state of the world he's in, and so focused only on the good that gradually the bad will begin to catch up to him. While we won't get to it until much, much later, his story comes to an emotional head further down the line. Either way, I loved this guy then, and I still do. Even through 3 whole games, he's remained my favorite in the entire series. Anyway, back to our journey. After meeting Sunbro, we begin making our way across the bridge. Now, up to this point, Dark Souls has kept itself restrained while it attempts to teach you, without words or exposition, the unspoken rules of engagement and the best ways to approach it. So, since we're past that extended, unofficial tutorial, now the game starts trying to kill you. Now, this part probably got almost everyone their first time through. There is a visual clue about this with charred stone and corpses on the path ahead of you, but on my first playthrough, I did not notice it and caught a face full of dragon breath. It's fine. Fortunately, it doesn't do enough damage to outright kill you, and you can run across and duck into this safe space without it attacking again. From here, we head further down and kick this ladder to open up one of the many, many shortcuts built into Dark Souls' world, which I then promptly don't use. Now, if I were playing this the same way I did all those years ago, I'd take this door on the left to go under the dragon and the bridge, but with the power of knowledge, I now know how to get around it. Yeah, I don't know why that works either. Masterfully slipping our way past the dragon, we shove all the souls we've gained up to that point into Faith, just enough to get it to 25. which is the exact amount of faith we need to pledge ourselves to the Covenant of the Sun and gain the best spell in all of Dark Souls. Fucking fight me! Lightning Spear. Bold, iconic, and devastatingly powerful, Lightning Spear is the spell of choice for the righteous warriors of sunlight. Strike down your adversaries with naught but the power of your unwavering conviction to all things good and just. Lightning Spear, the spell of champions. So yeah, I like Lightning Spear. It's simple, hits like a truck, and turns the entire rest of the undead area into a joke. Not many enemies in the game are resistant to lightning damage, and some are extremely weak to it, so this spell stays good throughout the whole game, even if it starts to slightly fall off toward the end. But that's fine, because eventually, we'll be getting an even better version of it. For the moment though, this here gate is blocking our happy fun times, so down we go to find an alternate path. Snagging this here key before we go, we introduce ourselves to the locals, do a quick balancing act, and continue on. Oh, hello there, square fog gate graphic. How are you doing? Pretty sure the camera's not supposed to catch that. Hang on a minute, I gotta draw attention to that shit. I'm not sure which body that is, but it looks like their legs are stretching away from their torso. This knight's position always made me laugh. It's like they're trying to imitate that Black Knight from earlier. Don't think it works for them though. Okay, this pathway's kind of a dick move. There's two enemies hidden on either side of these corners, so the best way to deal with them is to walk out and then immediately duck back in to try and lure them to you. I have a minor panic attack when I accidentally use Lightning Spear with this knight charging me. That works. It's fine though, because the Dark Souls ragdolls continue to be a built-in stress reliever. We round this corner to take our revenge on the prick who shut the gate on us. I was obviously over there, which allowed me to parry you from over here. Didn't you know? We pick up a very important key for our trouble and then continue on. Watch me expertly dodge this crossbow bolt totally on purpose. Moving on, we reach the next bonfire in this old church and hey, Andre, you fucking fridge of a man, how you doing? Okay, real quick kids, time for another pointer. Dark Souls is one of those games that gives you just enough information on the story and mechanics to get you going, but if you want to learn all the details, you got to do a bit of digging yourself. One of the best ways to do this is just by talking to everyone and exhausting all of their dialogue. Most of them have something important to tell you that gives you background on the world or a hint on where to go next. A lot of NPCs will even give new dialogue after certain points in the game, so it's worth checking back with everyone when you find yourself stumped. Other times, some info is deliberately hidden from you and there's no way to know about it without methodical exploration or just blind luck. This is what we used to call secrets. Bits and pieces of a game or entire chunks of it hidden away for you to find yourself or with the help of others. Remember what I said in the intro about discovering everything on your own? Well, it's not just you going on this journey. If you play online, you can see ghosts of other players going through the same areas you are, you can summon other players to help you, and yes, you can also invade other worlds to fight each other. See, Dark Souls was built around the idea of shared knowledge, being a communal journey of sorts, harkening back to the days of sitting with your friends at lunchtime in school, sharing your stories of secret playable characters, hidden levels, that whole Yoshi on the roof thing in Mario 64 that actually turned out to be true, stuff like that. It's not meant to just be played once and put back on the shelf, even though that one experience is still great all on its own. There's content in it that not everyone was going to find on their first time through, and there was a friggin' gold rush to discover it all. Remember the pendant fiasco, where entire swaths of the community were convinced this seemingly useless item had some hidden use, and collectively spent months, if not years, trying to find it? Only to be told by the man himself, Miyazaki, that it was, in fact, useless and was put into the game as a joke for this exact purpose. What a guy. This was still before the time when data mining became the norm and we could just dig into a game's files and find everything the boring way. The whole idea of shared knowledge being basically a necessity to experience everything a game has to offer has its pros and cons, but I have a certain respect for games like that. There's entirely not enough of them these days, that's for sure. Secrets that are actually, you know, secrets almost seems like a dirty concept these days, or at least an antiquated one. I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but I like my games with a bit of mystique to them. Anyway, I've old man rambled enough, let's get back to the adventure. Why do you have a giant Titanite demon statue living next door to you, Andre? Are they paying you rent? Or maybe they're just terrified of the man who, in a world of gods and demons, swords and sorceries, elects to bare-knuckle box people and drop-kick them out of fucking existence. Look, when you have that much meat on you, you can solve a lot of problems with a body slam. Now, before we head up to the bell tower and accomplish our first major goal, we have a few stops to make. So off we go to Darkroot Garden. I like Darkroot. It's certainly dark, but it's got some color and life to it that stands out a bit from the more bleak coloration of the undead burg above, without looking like the two don't belong in the same world. Still not exactly smiles and ice cream, as everything is still trying to kill you, including literal walking shrubberies and giant stone knights that are impressively weak to getting maced in the knee. Wow. I attempt to dismantle this item gank before it happens, and it doesn't go exactly to plan. A few close calls later, and we nab a very important item set. If you ever wanted to kill sentient trees, surprisingly, Dark Souls has you covered. Also lizards. Frogs? Lizard? Frogs? Something. Behold, the Dark Souls 1 ragdolls going fucking ballistic. We really only went this way to grab this ring that I don't need because I'm weird like that. We head back to Andre briefly to finish leveling up my mace to the max that I can currently get it, and while we're in the area, we stop by the entrance to Sen's Fortress to say hello to a very special boy. Meet Siegmeyer. Along with Solaire, he also became a fan favorite character. Very innocent, a bit doofy, and really sounds like he's trying to be the big chivalrous knight type, but is just kind of struggling.
So here I sit, in quite a pickle, weighing my options, so to speak.
But we love him regardless, and if you don't, you are factually going to hell. I'm sorry, those are just the rules. I don't really have a big segment to explain Siegmeyer's importance and reason for being liked because I feel it's a lot more obvious than Solaire. He's a walking onion who gets himself in way over his head on multiple occasions, but still keeps trying his best. And you know what? Good for him. We'll be seeing more of him later though, don't you worry. Like I said, we're trying for every NPC questline. I test out my newly empowered weapon on this giant sentinel knight and it proves very effective. Then we nab ourselves a Firekeeper's soul, very important, and bear witness to the Dark Souls community being as classy as ever. Now, what's supposed to happen as we climb the bell tower here is that channeler up there is supposed to buff up a bunch of hollows with ridiculous damage who then try and rush me through a very small door, making themselves very vulnerable to some portable war crimes. But I don't feel like dealing with that, so we're gonna nip this problem with some masterful lightning marksmanship. Stepping into this here elevator, we ride it all the way down and, hey, this looks familiar. Finding a path that looped back to Firelink after all that I had done up to that point was kind of amazing to a younger me. It kinda blew my mind that through all of that, I ended up this close to where I started. And that was kind of the moment where the whole of Dark Souls' world began to feel as connected as I see it today. While we're back in town, we stop by and check up on everyone. Petrus here finally has more to say to us, and after some donations, he tells us more about why he and other companions of his are here. They're escorting an important figure through Lordran on what he calls an undead mission to seek something called kindling, which is the art of feeding humanity to bonfires to gain power, which is something we've done ourselves before. We don't have much more to go off of yet, but we will very soon, don't worry. Now, I could have used that Firekeeper soul to upgrade my Estus flask while I was here, but I forgot to do that, so off we go. We're on our way back to Darkroot specifically to grab one more important item off the beaten path. Unfortunately, it's kind of protected by this much beefier halberd-wielding Black Knight, but thankfully its AI entirely broke and didn't seem to mind getting blasted in the back of the head with a bolt of lightning. Twice. And behind them is the best shield in the entire game. The Grass Crest shield doesn't have the highest defenses, but it does give a pretty substantial buff to your stamina regen when you have it equipped. This even carries over if you have it on your back while two-handing a weapon, and even then, its overall defenses are still pretty good. I always get this damn thing whenever I play this game. Always. Unfortunately, it's just a bit too heavy for us to continue light rolling, so time to start taking off some clothes. It lets the world admire the beef jerky muscle we're sporting. Also, the view of the basin here is just fucking gorgeous. Back up to the parish, we finally start making our way up to the bell tower. This knight learns the hard way that it can't parry lightning to the face. I'm pretty sure at this point it'd be easier to count what part of the Geneva Conventions we aren't violating. Breaking through this door, we meet another important NPC locked away in a cell.
I am Knight Lautrec of Karim. I truly appreciate this, and I guarantee a reward. Only later.
It's about at this point I looked down at my Estus flask and realized, oh, I'm an idiot, and skedaddled my way back down to Firelink. But not before getting off the elevator early to snag these hidden items. May as well check in on Lautrec while I'm down here. You can tell he's trustworthy because of his sinister chuckling. We talked to this lady that's imprisoned below Firelink to empower our Estus flask with the Firekeeper soul. Now that I say all of that out loud, that's pretty fucked up. What in the world am I doing? We reverse our hollowing and, at long last, make our way back up yet again. I decide to sprint past the hollows this time, and they very thoughtfully form a death queue for me. How considerate. Finally, we ascend to the roof and summon a dear friend. The Bell Gargoyle is a pretty easy fight when you've got Lightning Spear and Solaire on your side, even if he does tend to get a bit confused. Solaire, that way, buddy, that way, man. But with the amount of damage we can put up between the two of us, it hardly matters. It's a good beginner boss though. Nothing fantastic, but it does throw a spanner in the works by spawning a second one with half health toward the end.
1, 2, 3, 4.
With the gargoyles thoroughly dismantled, we climb our way up to the top of the bell tower and ring the first Bell of Awakening, marking the first major step in our journey. Which apparently magically summons this guy.
Oswald.
If you commit a sin at any point in the game, you can come back to this guy and pay him a sum of souls to erase it. We make one more pit stop in Firelink to check up on everyone, double check my equipment and Andre, and then continue on our way. As I leave the church, the game cheerily informs me that disasters are gone after the defeat of the Gravelord servant. Yeah, that's probably something else I should mention. Dark Souls' multiplayer has more than a few layers to it. Most of the covenants you can join, like the Warriors of Sunlight, alter how you experience the game's multiplayer and even introduce entirely new modes with it. The way they typically work is you join, you do a thing specific to the covenant, get a specific reward for that covenant, accumulate those rewards, and then turn in a certain amount of them to earn items or spells as you advance in rank. This is the frustrating part of trying to 100% the game these days, since the multiplayer, while it's still certainly active, is not as active as it once was, and most of the covenants are centered around PvP, which... I never liked. More often than not, I seem to just get laggy fights or people who have devoted hundreds to thousands of hours to their craft, and I am nowhere near that level. I do get why people like the PvP, it's just never been my thing. But the covenants are still a major aspect of the game and lend more to the idea that Dark Souls was developed with the concept of being this shared communal journey in mind, whether it be through helping each other along the way, or beating the living daylights out of each other. Really, it was just down to how you enjoyed playing the most, and to this day, some people still argue about what the true way to play Dark Souls is. Hint, there is none. Anyway, with our previously acquired basement key, we opened this here door to the lower levels of the Undead Burg. Would sliding down a rusty ladder like this be good for your hands? I don't think it would be. I guess I am wearing gloves. If we make an immediate right turn up these stairs, we find another gate to open, and holy crap, that's a pretty significant shortcut. And I forgot to include this in the recording at the time, but what makes this sort of thing especially cathartic is we're a good deal more powerful now, and these enemies that used to take a bit of work would be folding like paper. Despite how brutal Dark Souls can feel, it does something very important. Breaks up that difficulty with moments of mercy and genuinely rewards you for your efforts. Here specifically, it's like an indirect way of showing you, yes, you are progressing, you are getting more powerful by giving you a reference point of where you were not that long ago. It's a confidence boost, and even in games designed to test the player, this sort of thing is vital. And then moments later, we're introduced to not one, but two brand new enemy types, both of which fight much differently than anything we've encountered up to that point. The second of which being introduced in a straight-up gank. So directly following a moment of relief and reward, you're then reminded that the game can still throw new tricks at you, and you shouldn't get cocky, like I did. While we're down here, we free Griggs from his imprisonment, and then I promptly forgot to do anything else with them. I mean, aside from checking on them in Firelink later. Behold, the beautiful sounds of Sethorven. Ah! Before we take on the next boss, I elect to first open up the next shortcut ahead of time. It's awfully polite for enemies to just stand there and let me blast their head off their shoulders from afar. And would you look at that, the shortcut loops right back to Firelink again, all roads and Rome or something. Then I got bored of waiting. Oh, I guarantee more than a few people remember this guy. The Capra Demon themselves isn't that difficult or particularly interesting. What made this fight hell for new players in the old days is the two dogs that rush you down in the utterly tiny arena you fight them in. As you can see in the time it's taken for me to describe the fight, I'm already dead. Panic is the word I choose to describe this boss, because the second you cross that fog gate, this ugly-ass thing with twin greatswords is leaping at you like a bat out of hell, and the two dogs are chewing at your ankles. And by the time you manage to get away from them, you've already cornered yourself. You don't have a whole lot of room for error in this fight, which is probably why I don't like it very much. It's great as a scare for new players, and was certainly a wall back in the day for many people, but apart from that, it's just not that interesting. Round 2 starts off much better as I luck out and get both the dogs in one swing, and once you clear them, this fight gets much easier. The Capra Demon's swings are very slow, and while he can certainly take a chunk out of you, he's extremely weak to getting lightning shoved in his face. Near full health, 3 shots, dead. Damn. He also just kinda gave up toward the end for me. I guess he was mourning his dogs, the poor guy. I did just break into where he was squatting and trash the place without word or explanation. Ooh, shiny key. With our newly acquired unlocking instrument, we begin our descent into... Some of the hollow in here have torches, and they break the goddamn rules. They have this bizarre flailing charge that has no starting animation. It just kind of comes out all at once like... Down here, we rescue another NPC, Laurentius the Pyromancer, who was about to be eaten by... Oh, hello up there. I love this goddamn spell. Oh yeah, and watch your head while you're down here. I always forget the timing on this shit. Get off of me, you little... I died to these dogs in the water. I'm reminded why they're my least favorite enemy in the game. The butcher thing here briefly forgets there's a table in their way. One bolt to the face and a back full of mace gets them out of the way, and we are rewarded with... Oh yes. The large ember allows us to upgrade our weapons from +5 all the way up to +10, so we'll have to make a pit stop at Andre later. We also get a sack. I look beautiful. Okay, may as well just go back to Andre while we've got the time. Sackboy away! Back at Firelink Shrine, we do the usual checking up on everyone and see that Lautrec is missing. That's concerning. And hey, Petrus has friends now! I'm so proud of him. You mind repeating that? Thank you. Meet Lady Rhea of Thurland and her 2 companions Vince and Nico. They're the ones Petrus talked about being on that undead mission to seek kindling. They're not very talkative at the moment, so we won't stay long, but Vince does mention them going down into the catacombs soon. I can't wait to hear about their resounding success. One small note, NPC quest lines advance as you progress through the game and beat bosses, but you need to physically speak to several of them before you go too far, otherwise you'll miss your chance. You can fast forward a few quest steps by just quitting the game and jumping back in. I have no idea why this works, but oh well. A few resets later, we find Petrus all in his lonesome again, distraught about being separated from his group. Oh hey, Lautrec's back, and he has some spicy info for us? Why yes please.
Maiden Thurland and her followers recently arrived in this land, but she became stranded deep below the catacombs. Her followers either fled or were reduced to hollows.
Oh god damn it, and I was so confident in them. We confront Petrus about this and he's suddenly changed his tone entirely, almost seeming pleased that Lautrec spilled the beans to us. Maybe because he doesn't have to hide his intentions anymore?
Right now, you could do as you please with her. The poor little purebred is entirely helpless.
I restrained myself from zapping him on the spot. Well, now we have a maiden trapped in the undead catacombs to rescue, but we aren't exactly prepared for that, so we'll come back to this later. And Laurentius made it back here safe and sound. Sweet. He teaches pyromancy, which, unlike miracles and sorceries, are not dependent on stats when used, but are instead empowered by the pyromancer flame used to cast them. The more you level this thing up, the more powerful your pyromancies get, and being able to cast magic with almost no stat allocation needed aside from spell slots is pretty nice. Anyway, off to Andre. Imminent gorgeous view? Oh, I do agree. We give Andre the large ember and chat him up a bit. He tells us about a divine blacksmith in the Darkroot Garden who made weapons specifically for places like the catacombs. Well, isn't that convenient? Why don't we pay them a visit before we continue? Disasters are gone after the defeat of the Gravelord's servant, and we're off to Darkroot again. This time we hang a left in the area we got the elite knight armor from toward a set of ruins. Oh, hello, sir. How are you doing? If you don't mind, I need to get by you. Thank you. Come again. Up the tower we come to yet another fog gate. Well, not getting any less hollow here. Off we go. The Moonlight Butterfly is such a cool looking boss. It's one of the most complicated designs we've seen in the game up to this point. It's beautiful and ethereal, almost like it doesn't belong here, like it came from a dream. It's the most fantastical and alien-looking creature up to now. Its music theme is very simple but hauntingly pretty, fitting the butterfly's graceful, floaty movements. Its magic attacks can do a lot of damage if you're not careful, since they aren't entirely telegraphed until just as the attack is launched and it's already dead. Huh. Yeah, this fight takes much longer if you're running melee only, since it spends most of the fight flying around out of reach until it comes to rest on the bridge. But with Lightning Spear, it just kinda melts. Well, it's still a very cool boss from aesthetic alone, even if it can be kinda completely and totally cheesed with the right build. Fun fact, you can actually see it resting on the tower before you step into the fog gate. It also stands out as the only really pretty thing we've seen in the game so far. Everything else is dark, decayed, looking devoid of hope and life, or is just monstrous and frightening. The butterfly is entirely different and makes you wonder just how it got here. This is compounded more as you climb the tower and find the divine blacksmith Andre spoke about. Dead, and turned to stone, clutching their divine ember in their arms. Everything's been fairly straightforward up to now, but this is when Dark Souls first began to make me question things. Why was this odd creature here? Why was it at the blacksmith's tower? Was it the one who turned him to stone, or was it in mourning? Did it attack us because it was hostile, or was it trying to defend the blacksmith's remains? This is another layer to Dark Souls. The world tells a story to you, obviously through the dialogue of the characters and descriptions of the items you find, but it also has these moments of a sort of unspoken narration, details in the environment that give you hints or mysteries. Things that may be missed if you're not paying attention, but open up a lot of questions when thought about at length. The thing is though, not all of those questions end up answered. This is obviously not an approach to storytelling that everyone likes, but personally, I love this. It gives enough context to get you going, but the more you delve, the more you think, the more you uncover and let your mind wander, the deeper and more complicated this dark and depressing world starts to get, and the whole overarching narrative is made less and less cut and dry. Now, I'm seriously digressing and really need to get back on track, but we'll come back to this point later. For now, I'll just say that for me at least, this is when Dark Souls started to show that it wasn't just about the fun and the challenge. This was the first hint of a hidden beauty to it. Yoinking ourselves back to Andre, we give him the Divine Ember, and now he can make us Divine Weapons and plus 10 weapons. But I'm not doing either of those yet because at the moment I don't have my main weapon, so for now we'll be rocking a plus 5 mace. Gonna be relying on Lightning Spear to get us through the next bosses for a bit. But before we do that, we have a very special friend to go meet. We didn't just get the Divine Ember from the Divine Smith, oh no, we also got this key. Now, where does it go? Well, we only know of one more locked door so far, but we're taking a different route to it. Back in Darkroot Basin, we scurry our way across this little stretch of land, ignoring everything there for the moment. Don't worry, we'll be back later. For now, our friend awaits and he is apparently very eager to meet us.
If you smell what the rock is...
No! Meet Havel. He's a chunky boy who has something we want, and surprisingly, it's not his godly armor and weapon. We can't even get those yet. He is slow as fuck, but do not let him touch you. That massive bonker of his will most likely one-shot you at this point. Most people just chain backstabs on him since he's so easy to outmaneuver, but me, I like to live on the edge. That was risky! After taming the living boulder, we get the ring that literally everyone gets. Havel's ring is incredibly useful since it significantly increases the max load of equipment you can wear, which lets you wear big armor and use heavier weapons and stuff without worrying about slow rolling. And with Havel's power in hand, Sackboy evolves into John Dark Souls, also known as Protagonist Man. The Elite Knight armor is the most iconic set from the entire game and pretty much the whole Dark Souls series, so I felt like I had to wear it for this video. That being said, it does make me mid-roll even with Havel's ring, but we can deal with that. Welcome to Dark Souls' sewer level, kids. I don't know if this is actually a sewer, but I certainly count it as one. It's got all the hallmarks: cramped corridors, a dark, gross color palette, slime enemies that for some reason are highly resistant to physical damage, and of course...
Rats, we're rats, we're the rats. We pray at night, we stalk at night, we're the rats. I'm the giant rat that makes all up.
I actually don't have that much to say about the depths overall. I guess as far as sewer-esque levels go, this one isn't one of the worst. The area's only bonfire being hidden behind a locked door is a bit of a dick move, admittedly, but at least the key's not too far away. What's more noteworthy about the depths are things like the introduction of the basilisks, these freaky little fuckers that'll spew curse fog at you, the abundance of ROUSs, and the first NPC invader, Nightkerk. Kirk kinda sucks. At one point, I appeared to get invaded by an actual player and then didn't, I guess. And of course, the abundance of cramped corridors makes ragdoll freakouts all the more common and no less hilarious. I guess I have a friend now. You're coming with me. Foolish slime, I have the power of friendship on my side. Aww. But yeah, all in all, not a bad level, though I really only ever view it as a transition between the Burg and Blighttown, and it hasn't stopped feeling like that. Well, actually, there is one other notable thing about this place. To be a fly on the wall during this thing's creation, I gotta hand it to the artists. Being able to design shit like this is definitely its own skill set. Technically, this is also our first dragon boss fight, and what a first one it is. 50% of its body weight is teeth. It's also got an order of magnitude more health than any of the bosses we've fought so far. Now, that's also because I was able to summon Solaire and Nightlaw Trek for this. Go get him, boys! I'll be right behind you! The latter of whom had his summon sign hidden behind a pillar, the cheeky prick, and when you have summoned help, the bosses gain more health to compensate. But even without summoned help, this thing is chunky. Especially considering I'm running with a handicap with this underleveled mace, I'm basically just letting Solaire and Lautrec tank it while I pelt it with lightning. Ooh, that was a spicy air shot if I ever do say so myself. Ow! Although I say that, but watching the footage back, I'm not entirely sure if Lautrec did anything. He may have hit it once. Excellent job, gentlemen. Round up next week. Either way, with the Blighttown key firmly in hand, we zoop back to the bonfire, have a nice chat with Domhnall here, and at long last, reach the most infamous area of the Dark Souls early game. As I write this, I've been sitting here for a good 10 minutes, trying to think of what the hell to even say about Blighttown. Everyone knows it, everyone's experienced it, so what's left to say? Well, I guess I can say that as much as this area can piss me off, as much as I hate the poison waters that FromSoft just really seems to love putting in their games, and of course these fucking toxic dart fuckers, I love Blighttown. Aesthetically and narratively, I think it's one of the strongest areas in the entire game. It's basically an unofficial sequel to the Valley of Defilement from Demon's Souls, which also had a very similar theme. Ramshackle slums made of rotting wood, barely held together and looking prone to falling apart at a moment's notice. Everything is decrepit, gross, diseased, and decayed. The denizens here are warped and mutated. Maybe once upon a time they were human, but now there's something else, as if the filth and rot of this place has corrupted them. The waters are poisonous. The wildlife is nothing but giant insects and parasites. What else could even live in a place like this? This is a place for the lost, the undesired, and the outcast, below even the sewers of Lordran, locked away and forgotten. This right here is the strength of Dark Souls, hinted at with the Moonlight Butterfly and shown much more clearly here, and again later, but we're not there yet. Environmental storytelling. The world itself and the order you experience it tell you a tale, a hint of the state of the world before it became as it is now, what life was like before the fires began to fade. Now, as I said, I'm not an expert on the actual lore, so I won't be going into it much here, but when I first played this game, and as I returned to it several times throughout the years, this is always what Blighttown and its placement in the world told me. Up above, where the populace lived in relative comfort and safety, guarded by giant towers and walls of stone, the lowest of the low, the least wanted among them, lived lower than even the vermin in the sewage, treated like a disease, cast away, and never thought about again. It wordlessly questions whether the state of the world was all that great before the fires faded. It asks you, as the chosen undead, is this really worth fighting for? You see what it was like before you. You experienced it yourself at the asylum. You were one of those undesired and corralled. Why are you here? What reason do you have to even care what happens to this place? It never wanted you to begin with. We've just been following this vague prophecy, doing what we're told because we had to. It was our fate. But this? Is this really the world we're trying to save? Again, some or all of that probably contradicts a specific part of the actual lore, but I'm just saying what goes through my mind when I play this game. Art is always interpreted subjectively, and this, to me, is what Dark Souls is saying between the lines with Blighttown. Maybe this world isn't worth saving. Environmental storytelling. It's hard to get right, but it's incredibly powerful when you do. And we don't even have a full picture yet. I'm coming back to this thought later, so be ready for that. Oh, that's a good sign. My mace is really starting to feel like a pool noodle. At least Lightning Spear is still keeping pace, but we'll be getting a better weapon soon anyway. Descending down the slums here is never not nail-biting with how close you come to falling right off. There's a few spots where one mistimed roll can send you tumbling, but thankfully there's a bonfire relatively close to the start out in the open. Still doesn't help moments like these. Oh dear. You could just call that bridge Hi, my name is Anxiety, and it would be fitting. There's a lot of vertical traveling in the first part of Blighttown, and it can be kinda easy to get slightly lost. Also, I really need to re-emphasize these toxic dart fuckers. They never stop being annoying, but mercifully are also one of the very few non-boss enemies to stay dead when you kill them, even if you rest at a bonfire. I am forever grateful that these big guys can be parried. After a while, we finally start approaching the lower level of Blighttown. This place is big, and it takes a while to get down from this first part. I nearly restart that journey by misjudging a roll and getting myself stuck. Oh, this is a bit of a pickle, isn't it? Could I? Well, I guess I only have one option. Oof. How's it going, fellas? But at long last, we finally make it to the second bonfire. Oh, God. We reverse our hollowing to kindle it, and then this happens. What is happening to my leg? On our way out, we get our second NPC invasion.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Higher on the street and the noise. Standing on my...
You know, despite how decayed and gross this place is, getting to the bottom and looking up at the world just beyond the valley is amazing. I'm sure you'll be fine. Okay, this poison sound effect is really getting on my nerves, so let's wrap this place up. I do a bit of farming for upgrade materials for our weapon later, and take a quick stop in the big tree. I love how behind this illusory wall is a locked chest and another illusory wall. What was going through the mind of the first person to discover that? If I had to guess, they attacked the chest to check it for a mimic and accidentally hit the wall behind it. Oh, and don't worry, we're coming back to this place later. And after trekking all the way across to the other side of Blighttown, we finally come to Quelag's domain. This giant mess of spider webs, eggs, and ugh. At least I could finally stop that poison noise. From here, we bring back dear Mildred, whose face is probably still concave, and finally... Well, from a visual perspective, I'd say Quelag is one of the best looking bosses in the entire game, and no, I don't mean that in the way you think I do. I mean from an animation and overall design perspective, Quelag is awesome. The way her upper body moves with more grace and purpose, starkly contrasted with the skittery, more ferocious movements of the spider half, makes it seem like she's two different creatures rather than one. She's also one of those bosses whose theme I never really remembered until listening to it afterward, because when fighting her for the first time, I was kinda panicking. I mean, it's a giant spider lady running you down, spewing lava at your face, swinging a giant fiery sword around, and occasionally blowing you the fuck up. It's kind of a lot to deal with. I'd probably say she's the hardest boss up to this point, but with Mildred on your side, she becomes much easier. Even if Mildred is kinda fucking stupid. Mildred, help. Don't run into the lava, Mildred. Don't run into the lava, you fucking idiot. You absolute dunce. Get around the lava. But honestly, great boss. The build up to her with the whole mess of spidery webs, the overall fight itself, the music, it's all a home run. And once again, she has that what in the hell is going on here vibe with her whole lair and just herself in general. With Mildred getting the final blow, we bring her down, and at last, after several hours, we reach the second Bell of Awakening. The first half of our journey is almost complete. But before we leave, we head down these stairs and pass behind this illusory wall to meet... the Fair Lady. That's the only thing the game refers to her as, by the way. Her name is never actually spoken. Speaking to her proves unhelpful, but she does give us the option of joining the Chaos Servant Covenant, which we will be doing, but not yet. Now, she is completely silent, but if you speak to her with the old witch's ring equipped, she can actually be understood.
Quelaag, what is it?
Given her raspy and weak tone, she seems to be incredibly ill, sustained through the offering of humanities, which are what you use to increase your rank in her covenant. She's also the sister of Quelag, whom you just killed, and thinks you're her. So Quelag attacking you wasn't out of hostility, she was protecting her sick sister. God fucking damn it. A lot of you are probably familiar with Vadi Vidya's series Prepare to Cry, yet he goes over a lot of stuff like this. Dark Souls is fun, challenging, beautifully dark, and heartbreakingly depressing all at once. We do still have a quest to continue though, so leaving all this behind, we ascend back up Blighttown, take a small detour to grab a few items, reaffirm to myself that these toxic dark guys can all burn in the deepest layer of hell imaginable, snag this key, and head out. With the new key, we open a previously locked gate, take the elevator up, and once again, welcome home. And immediately we notice Lautrec is missing again, and the Firelink Maiden is gone, with only her clothes and a black eye orb in her place. And the game cheerily informs us she's dead, and now the Firelink bonfire no longer works. Okay, things are getting real. It was kind of neat to have this happen right at this point in my playthrough. Right after completing a major leg in the journey, we get a big oh shit moment and have a new objective. Track down Lautrec.
It's noisy, it snores, and its breath is lethal. This is no laughing matter, I tell you, and I was really beginning to like it here. Maybe it's time I do something about it.
But first, we have a new character to meet.
Was it you who rang the bell of awakening?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm looking at either. You know, for as bleak, hollowing, and brutal as Dark Souls can be, sometimes it just throws you a fucking curveball. Seriously, what in the hell is this thing?
I am the primordial serpent, King Sethorven.
Oh, okay, it's a primordial serpent. Question, what's a primordial serpent? Do they all have flesh mustaches? Either way, my man, please evolve lips and hide those teeth because they are freaking me the fuck out. Actually, wait, no. Now that I think about it, this thing with big puffy lips would probably look even worse. So yeah, never mind. Well, can you at least stop doing that jaw thing? I just... Ugh. Years later, after many repeat playthroughs, I still don't know how or why this thing exists. I mean, at the same time, though, I love that it exists because it's just so unexpected and adds to that special brand of oddity Dark Souls has to break up the tension. That's one of the more unique things about it. For all its darkness and brutality, it's still got a very fantastical element to it, and it isn't afraid to get a little weird. It's kind of like playing through a dark fairy tale. For example, giant mushroom men who punch your fucking soul out. Anyway, right, so Frampt here has awoken after both bells were rung and has some more info for our quest. He tells us we're to succeed Lord Gwyn, usher in a new age of fire, cast away the dark, and break the curse of undeath. For this, he sends us on a fetch quest to get something called the Lord Vessel from Inner Londo, but we can't get there without going through Sen's Fortress, so that's our next stop. He then becomes a vendor, kind of, in that you can feed him all of your unwanted items in return for souls. We stop at Laurentius to upgrade our Pyromancer Flame because even though we aren't using it, we do need it to be at about level 10 to advance his quest. And with all that settled, we head off to... Well, actually not just yet. First, I need to get my main weapon, which drops from these snake boys, and it's a fairly rare drop, so pardon me as I farm them for a bit. Oh, thank fucking God. We top our new sword off at +10, convert our mace to a divine mace, and now we finally head off to the catacombs. We still have a lady to rescue after all, and we can't leave that thread hanging forever. What's good, Skele boys? I'm rocking a divine mace now, delivering the good word of Jesus through the power of blunt force trauma. So the reason we wanted a divine weapon in the first place is because these skeletons down in the catacombs are not only weak to divine weapons, but they also won't stay dead unless killed by one or you kill these nearby necromancers that keep reviving them. And unfortunately, lightning spear does not count as divine damage. I like the little head pat they do when they revive. It looks so goofy. Ew, gross. So the catacombs themselves are pretty neat, honestly. They're sufficiently creepy looking, filled to the brim with skeletons, and more than a few secrets to find. It's big, it's dark, it's catacomb-y, but apart from that, I don't have anything specific to mention, so instead... Hey, so this segment was supposed to have the Spooky Scary Skeletons remix by Living Tombstone playing, but apparently that gets completely screwed by YouTube copyright, so just imagine it here. So how many of you didn't know there was an illusory wall here that led to a bonfire? I know there's probably a few of you at least. Also, I thought Patches was supposed to be here, but oh well. After our super happy skeletal fun times, it's time for...
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I got nothing to add here, moving on. And now it's time for everyone's favorite level. The one where you can't see shit. I really don't know why this specific trope just keeps showing up in games, but here it is, in all its frustrating, unfun glory. The second you cross the threshold into this area, the game's brightness fucking plummets and you have to rely on either slow, careful movement to progress, or if you're lucky enough to find a skull lantern on one of the necromancers earlier, you can use that to light your way. There's two other methods, the light spell you get from the DLC and the sunlight maggot, but more often than not, your two options are either lantern or good fucking luck, dumbass, hope you like fumbling around in the dark. Thankfully, we don't have to go all the way through this area yet, just a good portion of it. I'll save most of my opinions on this place for when we return here, but just... yeah. Anyway, after stumbling through the dark, we find Mr. Patches at last, and I'm not even gonna pretend to not know what's coming next. He of course tries to convince us there's treasure over the ledge, and then... Oh no, who could have seen that coming? Fun fact, if you hadn't gotten a lantern yet, don't worry, the game graciously gives you one now. So to recap, if you hadn't found one earlier, then after fumbling about damn near entirely blind, battling giant skeletons in the dark, and trusting every single blind jump and slide, we would finally get the thing we need to navigate this place reliably. No. Not yet. Anyway, we find Rhea down here in the pit, and unsurprisingly, her two bodyguards have both gone hollow, leaving her trapped. Vince and Nico are both fairly tanky, but our new weapon makes short work of them. After we ensure her escape, we yoink ourselves back to the bonfire and finally back up to Firelink. Petrus is less than pleased we rescued Rhea.
For the little madam is not worth her salt without her family name.
Charming. We find Rhea in the undead church we were in all those hours ago, and now she becomes a miracle vendor for us. We want her spells, as she gives some of the best miracles in the game, and in order to advance her story, we need to buy all of them off of her, so goodbye, souls. And finally, with all of that out of the way, we make our way back to Andre and enter... Welcome to beautiful Sen's Fortress, proving grounds of the undead, and most likely the sole source of entertainment for some sick motherfucker with too much time on their hands. Who needs legs? You know, despite being a house of traps, the actual traps here are pretty out in the open. This would be the perfect excuse to throw in some genuine rage game bullshit, like having the floor fall away from you without warning, but in all seriousness, Sen's wild ride is actually fairly tame. Now, that doesn't make it easy, of course. We got fights on precarious walkways with little room to maneuver, giant boulders that I love using as impromptu parry attacks, pendulous blades that'll send you flying into a tar pit, and if the fall doesn't kill you, hello, sir. Arrow traps, a mimic, this one elevator that I guarantee got you on your first playthrough, don't lie. This snake dude here just chillin', more boulders that have the power of reverse momentum, and of course, snitties. Kind of. And that's not counting the outside where we have a giant on the rooftops hucking massive fire bombs down at us. I won't show the entirety of my Sen's Fortress journey. It's a pretty big place with a fair amount of secrets. I did look for just about everything there was to find here, and there was no shortage of dumbassery such as this. I may just do a whole follow-up vid with some extra clips that I couldn't fit in. There's plenty in this whole playthrough I haven't shown. Sen's Fortress is like the depths in that it's more of a connecting area, but it's overall more memorable. It certainly does sell the whole House of Traps thing. I love this view from one of the balconies. Seeing the first bell tower off in the distance is a nice reminder of how far we've come. Oh, and of course, we have our second encounter with our dear Onion Knight.
Perhaps I could try some rolling. Bah, no chance. My head would spin.
While we're here, we have an NPC to rescue, which first requires us to do a little trolling. Big Hat Logan, very aptly named, is trapped here and requires assistance. Not a problem, I snagged a key earlier for just this occasion. He'll be skedaddling back to Firelink, so for now, onwards we press. We take out the firebomb lobbing giant for no other reason than pure spite for its existence and prepare to finally take on the area boss. You know, I was going to do the thing where you summon Iron Goddamn Tarkus, that is his full name, and let him solo the thing, but I needed an extra sunlight medal, so I summoned a fellow Sunbro and regretted my actions almost immediately. Oh well, gotta live with it. I'll be honest, the Iron Golem looks intimidating, but it's a complete pushover. Literally. And yes, you can make it fall off the edge of the arena with that and kill it instantly. I didn't do that since I wanted to get at least some fight footage out of this thing. I'll say though, the biggest threat it does pose is knocking you off the ledge, since its swings can definitely send you flying if you're not careful. Apart from that though, there's really not that much to talk about here. The real boss of Sen's Fortress is just the whole thing. The Iron Golem is more like a reward for getting to the end.
Why you bully me?
And with the triple pelvic thrust of the gods, we topple the Iron Menace. We briefly ponder the mystical orb of forward progression, and finally, we're hoisted up over the horizon. High upon the mountains, bathed eternally in the golden glow of the sun, spanning out as far as the eye can see, Anor Londo, the city of sunlight and the home of the gods. Very few things in gaming compare to that first sight. Coming up over the mountaintops and seeing the city in all its glory just gleaming in the warm glow of the setting sun. Or rising. Either way, it's a breathtaking sight. And yet... This is something I've only come to appreciate recently, but the placement of Anor Londo following your journey from the crumbling undead asylum through the mossy and rustic burg and the utterly squalid Blighttown is pretty brilliant. I said I'd have more to say about the world earlier, and here it is. After subtly questioning whether or not this world you've been chosen to fight for is worth saving at all, the game's unspoken narrative plays its final card here. You've seen the worst, the lowest, where the least wanted and most desperate were confined to and locked away. Now, you see where the highest rung in this old world social order resided. A city of gold and stone, beautiful and eternal, looming above it all, unbothered by the perils suffered by those beneath, as if existing in a reality all its own. I should reiterate, I'm not quoting the lore here or trying to be 100% accurate. This is purely my interpretation and mine alone, just from looking at the way the world's presented. After everything you've experienced in the world at this point, Anor Londo really does feel like a world apart, a completely separate society and way of life from what's been hinted at. It's a pretty obvious analogy to the richest and most wealthy among us being the most detached from reality's harshness, living in self-indulgent opulence. Yet, as beautiful as it looks, it's clear that something is still wrong. Eerie silence emphasized by its utterly massive size make it all feel so empty and lonely. There's barely anyone here except for ancient guardians and demonic creatures that have since moved in. Not counting any boss encounters, the only people you talk to here are the keeper of the city's first bonfire, a giant blacksmith, Siegmeyer, and Solaire, the latter two being fellow adventurers, not even native to the city. It's like the beauty of Anor Londo is a thin veil that hides its tragedy. And beneath it all, it's no different than the broken world you've seen so far. Which is entirely accurate. Anor Londo, as we see it, is a lie, an illusion created by the last remaining god in the city, Gwyndolin, the neglected son of Gwyn. When the illusion is broken, the golden sun that illuminates the city fades, leaving only the cold and hollow night. Even most of the enemies are gone, making it all feel even more barren. Whatever reality this city was hiding from, it caught up to it in the end. In many ways, both literal and figurative, Anor Londo is the peak of Dark Souls. There's a lot more I could say, but I think I've gotten the point across. To me, Dark Souls isn't just about the difficulty or the challenge. It's not the PvP or anything purely mechanical. For me, it's the experience, from beginning to end, and the story it tells you without saying more than it needs to. That probably makes me weird, but hey, that's nothing new for me. It's at least fun to write it all out. And now I think I've officially gone well over my allotted serious time and we're overdue for a tonal shift, so... While exploring this one room and getting my hands on the late Havel's coveted armor and weapon, I proceeded to fall headfirst into an obvious mimic that I knew was there and still somehow forgot about. Embarrassing, yes, but I can really only laugh at myself here. Brilliant timing, Minger! Brilliant timing! As was mentioned, we run into both Siegmeyer and Solaire here, the former of which we have to rescue from a room full of Silver Knights to advance his questline. In this place especially, it feels nice to run into these two, and reassuring that they haven't conveniently died off screen or something. Hey, remember the Firelink Keeper that died? Well, with the Black Eye Orb we got from their corpse, we can invade the world of Lautrec, who seems to have been expecting us, having put together a gank squad just in case. Unfortunately for them, I have the power of Jesus. With the Firekeeper avenged and their soul regained, we summon Solaire to our side once more and step through the big fog wall. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Anor Londo Arena. We have an exciting match for you today. All the way from the Northern Undead Asylum and the Land of Astora, it's the enigmatic Chosen Undead and Solaire, the Warrior of Sunlight. Together, these two wandering knights will face off against the reigning champions, the unlikely destructive duo you all know and love. the mighty and menacing Executioner Smo, whose name no one can agree on how to pronounce, alongside the lightning-fast Dragon Slayer Ornstein. Please put your hands together for the Super Londo Bros! Ooh, that's not good. Dragon Slayer Ornstein and Executioner Smo, however the hell you want to say it. The original wall, the ender of many Deathless runs, and the most famous boss encounter in all of Dark Souls. This fight is great. Its music theme is amazing, and the dynamic of Smo's slow but devastating attacks mixed with Ornstein's speed works better than you'd expect. Trying to keep Smo in line of sight while dancing around Ornstein's attacks can be tricky, and if you try to break away and get some distance, Ornstein just zoops on over at the speed of fuck you and keeps you nailed down. Of course, with Solaire at your side, you can keep one of them distracted, but I'm quite familiar with soloing these guys over the years, and let me tell ya, the fight's different depending on who you choose to prioritize too. The second phase is reached when one of them is defeated and the still living one takes the other's power and fights you solo. As an aside, I love the detail of how Ornstein is respectful and honorable and how he takes Smo's power, whereas Biggie Smalls over here just flattens Ornstein's sorry ass like the greedy, malicious fucker he is. Did I mention this guy ate people? No? Well, there you go. All in all, there's a reason this fight is the most remembered one. It was a summit back in the day, and while I can definitely say, even solo, it's not as hard as I remember it being, it's no less awesome. The mood is great, the music is great, the whole encounter is a lot of fun, it's just a really good boss fight, and is the pinnacle of the entire Dark Souls experience. But the funny thing about pinnacles is, after you reach them, there's only one way left to go. But before that, boobies! Yeah, I know, it's an old joke, but it's tradition at this point. Guinevere, daughter of Guinevere, daughter of Gwyn and Princess of Sunlight. Oh god, I want to die now. Guinevere, daughter of Gwyn and Princess of Sunlight. Let me tell you, someone was very happy when designing her. I'd show you the internet's overall reaction to her, but I don't think I need to. I really don't. Funny story, in an interview, Miyazaki said that when creating Guinevere, her height was his idea, but her size was not. The artist on his team who came up with the final design, however, just seemed so pleased with it that Miyazaki didn't have the heart to refuse it, and here we are. Lady Hawkers congratulates us on making it all the way here and rewards us with the sought-after Lord Vessel. And with it, we have officially unlocked fast travel. Specifically, when resting in a bonfire, you can now warp to a few specific bonfires, which is definitely handy, especially at this point in the game. Also, she's not real. I'm sorry to break your hearts. Now, this is when the illusion that Gwendolyn had been casting over Anor Londo would be broken and the entire city descends into night, making his boss fight available. However, I did it a bit differently. Back in the catacombs, I came across this here ring, which when worn, removes the illusory statue of Gwyn guarding Gwendolyn's boss door and opens up the ability to join his Darkmoon Covenant. But I didn't, and instead proceeded to rack up my regicide count. I would have devoted a whole segment to talking about Gwendolyn's boss fight like I've done with the others, but to be honest, I really don't like it that much. It's an endless hallway battle as he keeps flinging spells at you from a distance and teleporting away from you when you get too close. The cluster spell attack can be blocked by pillars, the big soul arrow goes through them and needs to be dodged, he'll also fire a rapid shot bow at you, and that's about it. Really, the most interesting thing to talk about with him is his lore, but I'm not going over the lore in this video, so go watch someone else if you're really interested. I'll just say that the poor guy's got some serious daddy issues. Not like their dad was exactly a saint, but that's a whole other story. Me, I'm just here for one particular goodie directly after his boss fight. The last miracle to complete my collection. Oh yes. And with the power of the sunlight metals I gained from doing a bunch of co-op runs off screen, most of which I'll talk about in the behind the scenes and extras video after this one, which will pop up right here when it's done. We return to the sunlight altar, Solaire at our side, and with our deepened pledge to the cause of sunlight and righteousness, we gain the Greater Lightning Spear.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
And just in time too. Hope you've enjoyed the ride so far, kids, because now is when things start getting bumpy. Oh, and I was going to talk about the completely optional area, the painted world of
Ariamis.
But like, I couldn't think of a good place to put it in this script, and this video has taken long enough already, so when I make that extras video, I'll talk about it there, so just check that out when it's done. Anyway, back in Firelink Shrine, we find our boy Siegmeyer chilling by the bonfire. We let him know that it was us that opened the gate to Sen's fortress, and as a show of thanks, he gives us another miracle, Emit Force, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I can't say no to that face.
I'll be heading down below shortly. There's nothing worthwhile up above. No worries. Venturing is my life. I'm prepared for the worst.
Look, you gotta admire the optimism. Down below, we use the Firekeeper's soul to revive her.
Thank you.
And she speaks.
I am impure. My tongue never intended for restoration. I wish not to speak.
And now I'm depressed again. Oh well, at least she's alive. Hey, where'd that really sullen dude go? And hey, Logan made his way back here, much to Griggs' delight. Logan becomes a vendor for more high-level sorceries, much like how Rhea got us more powerful miracles.
I'm afraid that you are unable to learn sorcery.
Or he would if my intelligence was high enough. Unfortunately, I've been pumping all my souls into my Jesus muscles and my muscles, so my brain is as smooth as silk. Not to worry, we'll get a chance to advance his quest later. For now, we can attend to Laurentius and, of course, later, Siegmeyer. First off, in order to advance Laurentius' questline, we need to get his Pyromancer Flame up to +10. Then, make our way back to Blighttown. Down there, behind one of the pillars in the middle of the swamp, we meet a brand new NPC, Quaylana.
Very well. You shall be my pupil, but to pursue my pyromancy, you must give something up. Are you prepared to do this?
Well, that's not ominous at all. Either way, she becomes a vendor for pyromancies, and we need to pick up one of the ones unique to her. With that done, we scoot our way over to the Great Hollow and find who else but our dear Onion Boy in a spot of trouble once again. How unexpected. This guy is a dork and I love him. This part's simple, he just needs some purple moss to get through the poison. And with our friend once again rescued, his quest is advanced, and we make our way back into the big-ass tree. Why? Well, both to make getting to a later step in Siegmeyer's quest easier, and also because we need to start gathering upgrade materials to finish our weapon, and unfortunately, this place has a few that we need. I say unfortunately, because this tree is a fucking dick. Welcome to the Great Hollow, or as I like to call it, Help! The entire level is a downward progression through winding routes, many of which are rounded, which leads to shit like this happening. If you couldn't tell, I don't like this place very much. Dark Souls was not meant to be a platformer, and this whole level is a great example as to why it wasn't. And even ignoring that, falling onto or jumping between platforms with rounded edges is always an exercise in frustration no matter what game you're playing. It's hard to not feel a bit annoyed when you're barely off center by half a pixel and end up becoming another statistic for the floor. In the world of gaming, gravity has the highest kill count. And if that wasn't enough, more of those buggy-eyed basilisks are in here, and with such limited real estate to work with, it's very fortunate I had big bolts of lightning to solve these problems with. Even then, I still ended up getting cursed and losing a huge chunk of souls in the process. I didn't have a good time while I was down here. There were more than a few butt-clenching moments with these near-blind leaps of faith. Oh, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted for Christmas. After a painstakingly slow journey, we descend to the bottom, fight our way through the Mushroom Kingdom apparently, and into one of the coolest areas in the whole game. The Great Hollow leads out into a shoreline of ashen white, looking out over an endless ocean of dark waters. Off in the distance, other massive trees loom into the skies and pierce the surface, as if holding the world above them steady, all backed by that ominous but beautiful music. After the frustration of the hollow itself, finding this directly after it was kind of mind-blowing to a younger me. And to think, This whole part of the game is hidden behind a fake wall, hidden behind another fake wall. I have to wonder how many people missed this place their first time around, or for that matter, if there's anyone out there watching this who still wasn't aware this place existed. I mean, most likely not, but it's fun to think about. Down here, there's a massive hydra blocking our path, and while I failed to get footage of it, it can leap over the shoreline if you try to run away from it, which is more than a bit pants-shittingly terrifying the first time you see it happen. Far, far, far at the other end of this place, traveling along the winding shores, you finally reach a broken hollow, and within, you find an ancient dragon, likely the last one remaining following the uprising of the gods. Surprisingly, it seems entirely unbothered by your presence, just existing. Even if you go all the way around it and cut its friggin' tail off, it's still completely passive, or just uncaring. It's kinda creepy, to be honest. Lore-wise, looks-wise, and music-wise, Ash Lake is amazing. Hands down one of my favorite areas in the whole game, even if nothing much of note happens down here. Well, not yet anyway. We did come here to checkpoint it, so we'll be back later. For now, we bring ourselves back up to Firelink and talk to Laurentius. He's impressed by the pyromancy we got from Quelana and asks if we'd share where we got it. If we say yes, he'll depart for Blighttown to go search himself. And with all that done, let's report back to Frampt. He seems happy to see us with the Lord Vessel.
Forgive me. I really should calm down. I assume that you are ready. Now, be still.
Wait, be still for whoa, God, no! I'd like to remind you all that it wasn't that long ago when we fed this guy all of our unwanted junk, including literal, actual shit. Can you imagine how bad it must smell in there?
This is the Firelink Chamber for the successor of Lord Gwyn. Now, place the Lord Vessel on the altar.
Yep, okay, sure, fine. Just gonna repress that memory deep into my subconscious. How was I carrying that thing all the way here? It's fucking massive. It's bigger than me. Jesus Christ, my guy must have a spine made of titanium. And with the Lord Vessel in place, the endgame areas are all unlocked. Next, we're tasked with finding the 4 Lord Souls left by Gwyn in order to satiate the Lord Vessel and open the chamber door. The souls in question belong to Gravelord Nito, the 4 Kings of New Londo, Chaos Witch Izalith, and Seath the Scaleless.
Are you ready? Then we shall return. Stay still for a moment.
Oh God, please no, not a... No amount of therapy will ever fix that. Anyway, now that I'm sufficiently mentally scarred, it's time to hunt down the Lord Souls, and our first stop just happens to be the closest. Welcome to the latter half of Dark Souls, kid. Oh. Sullen dude, is that him? Yeah, so turns out following the appearance of Frampt, Sullen guy at some point went hollow. And, well, when an undead goes hollow, there's no going back, so... yeah, shit. Anyway, moving on. Welcome to the latter half of Dark Souls, kids. From here, progression opens up, and while we're going after the 4 Kings first, we can acquire any of the Lord Souls in any order we want. But we're doing a very specific order for a good reason. You'll see. I did mention that this is when the ride starts getting bumpy. Thankfully though, New Londo is actually a pretty good area. Not my favorite by any stretch, but the atmosphere here is solid. This is an entire city that was flooded to contain the spread of the abyss, and boy does it feel like it. Not just because of the water, obviously, but the overall color and darkness of the area really sells that whole drowned aesthetic really well. Another fitting touch is that there are absolutely no bonfires in this entire level. None. Why would there be? There's no fire here. No light, no life, nothing. It's all flooded and empty, save for the vengeful spirits still haunting the water-eroded structures. They can't be harmed by any means, even by magic, without being cursed, or using these things called transient curses. It's kind of a weak gimmick, honestly, since it's solved by using one item and the ghosts all have chances to drop them, and if you somehow run out, the moss vendor from earlier sells them. Not that the ghosts themselves aren't spooky, but at least in my experience, they're not very threatening without that invulnerability. They're very slow and their attacks aren't hard to avoid. I mean, unless they're coming out of the goddamn walls, then they're a bit tricky to deal with. Ow! Dick. Especially when an entire posse just phases through everything to gank you. Still, having only one enemy type for most of the area is kinda weak. I mean, there's a second kind of ghost, but I think there's only like 2 of them in total. We do get a bit more variety after we unflood the city and open up the second half, though. To do so, we need to get a key from this guy who tells us a bit more about what we're going up against. The Abyss, where the 4 kings now reside, isn't traversable by mortal folk. However, we could gain the ability to do so by finding a certain Knight Artorias. Artorias long ago traversed the Abyss to battle against it, so that's our best bet to kicking in the front door of the 4 kings' home and wrecking shop. So while we can't get the Lord's Soul just yet, we do have a few things to get from here. In the lower half of New Londo, we see the bodies of all the previous inhabitants, piled up and rotting away. It's legitimately disturbing and more than explains why these ghosts are here. They're the spirits of the citizens who were unwillingly sacrificed to try and stop the Abyss, trapped in their homes as the waters destroyed them and everything they had. We also finally get a new enemy type, the Dark Wraiths, these edgelord Skeletor-looking fuckers who flourish their blades about with a kind of control and grace we haven't seen in many enemies up to now. It does seem like they're trying very hard to look cool, admittedly. We've also got this giant blobby thing. I'm still not entirely sure what it is, but it looks like some grotesque amalgamation of bodies, souls, and pure abyssal energy congealed into one being. Ugh. So yeah, New Londo is still a pretty solid level in my eyes, though really it's carried by its atmosphere and the story behind it. The whole gimmick of the ghosts is pretty weak and easily solved, and while I can appreciate the lack of bonfires, I can also imagine that frustrated more than a few people. I didn't mind it personally, but I can understand others hating it. Pushing forward past some more Dark Wraiths, we come across the main thing we're after down here, the Big Boy Ember. I should also mention that by this point, I had already gone back to the Northern Undead Asylum by climbing the tower in Firelink and doing this. Killed the stray demon at the asylum, and nabbed the Titanite slab that drops from it, which we need to upgrade our weapon to the max level. I would have talked about this earlier since I actually went there when I was still at Sen's Fortress, but it kinda messed with the pacing of the video. On that note, not enough games do the return to where it began and now there's bigger, badder enemies there thing, and more should do that because it's always cool. We also, sadly, put down the now fully hollowed Oscar. Rest in peace, buddy. And with the Thick Boy Ember, the Titanite slab, and all the Titanite chunks we've attained, we return to Andre and ascend our weapon to plus 15, the absolute strongest it can be. We also get one last tidbit from him. The Darkroot Garden houses the grave of Sir Artorias, and he just so happens to sell an item that gets us to it. So, one 20k soul splurge later, we unlock a previously sealed door. Yes, I know you can get around that sealed door by going to Darkroot Basin and going around it the long way, but I forgot to mention it during scripting, so shush. I think the sight of this forest alone just triggered a few people's fight or flight responses. We take out some of the guardians here, while this guy proceeds to lose an argument with a tree, and now we're talking to a cat with a really long mouth. This is Alvina, and she seems intent on us not disturbing the grave of Artorias. She's also the leader of the Forest Hunter Covenant, which was the de facto main PvP covenant back in the day. Used to be you couldn't walk into this forest without getting invaded by about 2 player phantoms ganging up on your happy ass, but seems to be much less active these days, and I am certainly not complaining. I'm just here to commit some casual grave robbing. Yeah, Seif. Everyone knows Seif. This is the other most famous boss encounter in all of Dark Souls. Another one of those fights that just has a mood to it, between its arena, its music, and of course the story behind this big pupper. The old companion of Knight Artorias now standing guard over his grave to ward off would-be intruders like us. It's incredibly unfortunate I was so overpowered for this point in the game with my plus 15 weapon and soft-capped strength, because this fight was over so much faster than I wanted it to be. You can initiate this boss fight much earlier if you happen to drop that 20,000 souls on that crest from Artorias, and in fact, I did that in my first playthrough. As for the fight itself, I don't have much to say about it. It's a good fight, and Seth can pile on the damage, especially if you're lower level than I was. But what makes this fight so famous, aside from the music, and of course its backstory, is that when brought to low health, Seth starts to limp, holding one paw up and stumbling after you, looking beaten and worn, but still fighting to defend its master and friend's grave. I mean, there's no other way to say it, it's heartbreaking. I didn't even know the story when I first fought them. It was just a big wolf with a sword to me, and seeing it suddenly get so much weaker when on its last legs still gave me pause. Its damage gets gutted, it falls over and struggles to get back up during some attacks. It genuinely made me feel sorry for it. In my first playthrough, this was perhaps the first time I felt hollow after killing a boss. I didn't feel like I overcame some great obstacle despite having a lot of trouble with them prior. I just felt sad. Again, in this playthrough, I was far too powerful to properly show this, and that's entirely my fault. But the memories of that first encounter are still fresh, even after all these years. And with Seth tragically put down, we gain what we came here for, the Covenant of Artorias. This ring allows us to traverse the abyss where the Four Kings hide and commit some righteous murdering upon them. So we trek our way back down to the depths of New Londo, bash in some edgy boy faces once again, equip our new ring, and... okay, that fall always makes me nervous. I may feel slightly conflicted about New Londo itself, but I don't feel conflicted about this boss. This is another home run as far as I'm concerned. It's impressive just how much a blank, featureless background can add to a fight. Sometimes less really is more. You're dropped into this completely black, endless void, your first taste of the abyss. And before you can even get your bearings, if you can at all, this music starts blaring in your ear as one of the Four Kings rises up in the distance and charges at you. It's pure panic. And just as you're wondering where the other three are, oh hello! The way this boss works is, as you're fighting, the other kings will gradually spawn. Even after you kill one, they'll just keep regenerating and spawning back in. Up to 4 kings can be active at any one time, and while 1, even 2 is manageable, all 4 is damn near impossible. This fight is a damage race. Kill the kings quickly before you get overwhelmed. Now, thankfully with the power of my brand new miracle, I have more than enough damage to get through the fight in relative ease, but I still love it. Yes, I may know the tricks, and yes, I can basically just brute force my way through it at this point, but that doesn't make me like it any less. Extremely solid boss for me. Not my favorite, but it's definitely up there. And with the death of the fallen 4 kings, we gain the Lord Soul Shard bequeathed to them by Gwyn, and get the hell out of there. 1 down, 3 to go. Oh right, we haven't checked up on Laurentius yet. I wonder how... oh. Laurentius? He... oh. Oh shit. Yeah, turns out Laurentius also went hollow on his journey into Blighttown. This dude was actually one of the nicer NPCs and genuinely enjoyed teaching you pyromancy, so seeing this happen, yeah, fuck. I mean, we can't do anything about it besides put him down now, but damn, that one stings. Anyway, we're back in Blighttown for one specific reason, and it's to join the Chaos Covenant with the Fair Lady. I apologize, my fellow Sunbros, but I do this for the greater good. You will soon understand. We need to reach rank 2 in the Covenant, which requires us getting a whole 30 humanity to the Fair Lady, and that's a big chunk of change. So much, in fact, that I had to go farm rats in the Burg for a bit to get what I needed. I don't know why the rats drop humanity, but they do. I sacrifice literally all of it to the Covenant and get my required rank. Now, we need to make a small detour. Well, a fairly substantial detour, really. Okay, folks, I would give my thoughts on the Demon Ruins right now, but it's too soon. We're coming back here at a later point, and I'll have plenty more to say then. Just bear with me. For now, we're going to leap forward a bit. With our rank in the Chaos Covenant, we gain the ability to open this here door, which leads us into a hallway with a bunch of sunlight maggots. And then we murder them all in righteous fury! I'm pretty sure we only need to kill this specific one right here, but I am not taking any chances. This hallway is also a shortcut between the Demon Ruins and one of the endgame areas we'll be going to later, but we're not using it. For now, we're just here to kill these bugs. Then we yoink ourselves back out. A later quest step has been assured, and we can continue on our way. And now, it is time to return to Skeleton. Spooky, scary skeleton, and we're back. Okay, so, New Londo was nice. A little weak in terms of enemy variety, but overall a rich, creepy atmosphere and a genuinely really solid boss. Hope you got your fill of that view from the top though, folks, because it's all downhill from here. The Tomb of the Giants gimmick is this. You're looking at it. The reduced sight radius and reliance on other sources of light to navigate would be annoying enough, but of course, they hide massive fuck-off skeletons in the shadows as well. At least you can see their eyes, so it's not like you're completely blind, but you know what isn't fun? Inching your way forward in the dark and trusting leaps of faith because you can barely see 3 feet in front of you? Why did so many games do this back in the day? I still see it pop up every so often. Literally the only genre of game I like this sort of thing in is survival horror, and yet it was all over action and platformer games for the longest time. Why? All it does is force you to slow down. It's padding of the most blatant kind. And it's obvious why, because if you remove the darkness, the Tomb of the Giants is barely a level. It's just a bunch of caves with skeletons in it. There's a nice view of Lost Izalith and Ash Lake down here, but the area itself is just so bland. The featurelessness of the Abyss worked because, you know, it's the Abyss. It's an absolute void of nothing. And even then, you could still very clearly see the enemies you were supposed to be fighting. You didn't have 90% of your vision taken away, and only see the kings when they were right up on your ass about to pancake you. Friends. God damn, that is a huge fucking arrow. I'm fine. I'm completely fine. I'm absolutely fine. I'm sure people will defend this, saying it adds tension and creepiness, and sure, it can in the right setting, but you know, New Londo had a pretty creepy, intense atmosphere, and it didn't need to make it near completely blind to do that. At least the game gives you a lantern at the bottom of a pit at almost the halfway point, and to use the lantern you need to give up one of your hands to keep it lit, which isn't the worst thing, but it's just one more layer of annoyance on top of everything else. Despite all of this though, the Tomb of the Giants is not my least favorite level. It's irritating, but it's mercifully short, and it did give us that one really funny gif. After you pass a certain point, the game just kinda drops the whole darkness thing with about as much fanfare as it deserves, and I get invaded by an NPC for my trouble. Why are there a ton of mini pinwheels down here surrounding Gravelord Nito's domain and baby skeletons that come out of the floor? I'm sure it's all in the lore somewhere. I do especially love how when entering this fight you have to take near half your health and falling damage. That's fun. Fun fact, when I first played this, I always had trouble with Nito, but everyone I knew said he was easy. Then at the same time, everyone I knew said Seath was really hard, and I beat Seath on my first try with no difficulty. I'm not really sure what that says, but there you go. Well, I'll definitely say Nito's music theme is fantastic. It certainly sounds incredibly spooky and undead-like. Makes sense as he presides over the realm of the dead and all that. His design is fucking awesome, and he definitely has significant intimidation value. But apart from that, well, these days I now see why everyone said he was easy. Aside from a few skeletons that require a divine weapon to completely kill, Nito only has like, I think 3 attacks. He swings his sword, he explodes in a shadowy burst, and he does this thing, which is actually bullshit and really hard to avoid. You just gotta dodge roll at the right time, but man is it precise. Still, now I never have trouble with him. And as long as you don't move into the back of the arena and just let him come to you at the start, the giant skeletons back there don't do anything. The only thing that threw me for a loop this time around was this one skeleton that just refused to die, no matter how many times I killed it with my divine mace. I don't know what specific rule kept this Skelleboy alive, but apparently its devotion to Lord Nito was far too great to be dissuaded by holy bludgeoning. Killing Nito seemed to do the trick though. Rest in pieces, the world's most determined skeleton. So yeah, Nito looks cool, his music is cool, but his fight is kinda meh. At least it's a decent payoff. 2 Lord Souls in the bag, 2 left. And thankfully, we don't have a big checklist to attend to this time. We just port back to Enter Londo and head straight to the next area. Oh, but not before utterly flattening the Firekeeper here, since she's just a tad bit upset with me for killing Gwendolyn. Understandable. Apparently, the first line of defense for the Great Archives is a giant armored boar. Not a problem, I have the power to throw lightning bolts. So of course I elected to run in head-first sword swinging. Why am I like this? I guess Seth liked the single boar defense so much he decided to use it a second time. To be fair, it did work on me at least once. So I should let you all know, the reason we're doing the final areas in this specific order is because it happens to be the same order I did them in all those years ago. And by pure coincidence, it also happens to be the order of my opinion on them from best to worst. So yeah, you know I'm gonna be talking some shit. I'll say first and foremost though, I actually love the Archive's looks. The whole giant magical library thing in fantasy is always great, and I imagine sorting all this shit must have been hell for the bookkeepers. I like how the crystal formations on the walls leading up to Seth's room spread more and more the further up you climb. It's like a slowly spreading infection and you're approaching its source. So the visuals are good, especially compared to the Tomb of the Giants, mostly because, you know, I can see them. It's just everything else I don't like. For one thing, the enemy variety. These crystal soldier dudes are the most common enemy in this whole level, and they are everywhere. No, really, I mean everywhere. They're fairly fragile, but they're pretty fast, like to ambush you, and do quite a heavy amount of damage per hit, but they alone are not the problem. Remember these guys, the channelers? Well, they're back again, and yes, they also do that goofy trident dance that buffs the damage of all enemies around them, just like the one in the Berg. Only now, instead of buffing a group of relatively mundane and easily dealt with enemies into an actual threat, it makes the crystal dudes who were already hitting pretty hard start hitting like fucking freight trains. Oh! Oh, that was the most devastating ass shot in history. To progress in this level, we actually need to take this elevator here all the way up to Seth's room. Seth actually can't be killed here as he just instantly heals any damage you do to him. You're just supposed to die, which apparently results in you getting captured and thrown in a cell. It's really odd to have a supposed to lose fight this late in the game. Normally you'd see those toward the beginning to set a narrative tone or to give you a goal to shoot for later. Having it here is just, I don't know, it's weird. Oh, and by the way, even though you're supposed to die here, you still lose all your souls in humanity when you do, so if you didn't know that beforehand, ripperoni, my friend. Thankfully, I came prepared. Well, the prison cells are even more impressive in scale, and again, whatever those bookkeepers were paid, it was nowhere near enough. How many times do you think someone fell to their death trying to get something out of the A section all the way up there? Probably at least once a week. After exploring around and opening a couple of these cells, we find, tucked away in the back of one, all on their own, Rhea. Yep, Rhea. All the way here, and fully hollowed. There might be a line of dialogue somewhere that explains why she came here, but I likely missed it. Either way, it seems she was also captured sometime before you, locked away, and likely went hollow just sitting in this cell. Another friend gone and in need of being put down. Seeing how she doesn't even cast any miracles and just runs at you punching is kinda sad, really. Despite everything, she still ended up like this. Same as the Crestfallen Knight, and same as Laurentius. God damn it, man. Well, at least we find Logan again, also trapped in a cell, and once again in need of rescue. We don't have a key for that cell yet, so we'll have to come back later. Alright, you know, we've been negative and gloomy long enough, and I'm getting fatigued here. We're in need of some levity. So, here's my adventures with the corpse of a snake man. Enjoy. Oh, okay, I guess I have a friend now. Well, come with me. Joined arm in arm. We're gonna go see the world together. They are actually just completely stuck in me. Okay, this is my buddy now. Hi, Logan. This is my buddy. This is my new friend. How are you doing? Don't be afraid. The outside world is much better than this old place. You'll love it, I promise. Oh no, come on, come on, come on. Come on. Random bit of geometry. You will not stand between me and friendship. Yes! Friendship triumphs over all. Alright, hang on. I need to get them in front of the ladder. I need to get them on top of me, in front of the ladder. Why is this suddenly the thing that I have to do? I don't know. But it is. I need— No! 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 Oh! 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 Oh, it's okay. It's okay, buddy. It's okay. It's okay. No! No. Oh, that's so sad. Man, I'd ask if you want to be my friend, but already I can tell it won't work out. It's here that Dark Souls really starts overusing the enemy hiding behind corner waiting to attack you thing. Seriously, you could swing around any blind corner here and have about a 70% chance of hitting something in the face. Gotta love that view though. Honestly, I can't point to any one thing the Archives does that makes me not like it. It's a bunch of smaller things that add up. I placed it below the Tomb of the Giants, but really, I'd rate them almost the same. Where the Archives is a bunch of smaller annoyances like the level layout, the enemy variety, and stuff like that, the Tomb had one blatant annoyance that was much easier to focus all my frustration on. And at least the Tomb was short. The Archives feels like they made this massive, brilliant looking map, but didn't have enough ideas to fill it. Which is probably accurate considering that, sadly, Dark Souls' original development started getting rushed toward the end. I'll get into that later though. After further adventuring and stealing all the things from all the chests, we eventually find the key to Logan's big-ass cell in the prison. So it's off to once again rescue our gloriously hatted friend, but not before this happens. Ow! One in the back, one in the shoulder, and one directly in the ass. That is just disrespectful, and how dare you. Back in the cells, we set Logan free, who I can imagine is only barely holding himself back from sprinting out of this cage and doing the reading equivalent of devouring these books like a starving wolf, and now he'll actually teach us all of his spells regardless of our intellect. And sadly, we do need to buy all of them to advance his quest, and there's a lot, so pardon me as I burn my wallet alive.
200,000 souls later.
Okay, it was actually 183,000, but close enough. Logan also discovered the source of Seath's immortality. In the game's intro, we're told Seath lacked the immortal scales of his brethren in the ancient times and betrayed them. After helping Gwyn win the war against the ancient dragons, Seath delved into his research on how to artificially create this immortality, and apparently succeeded. And at some point in the whole process, he kinda, sorta, maybe went completely insane? So yeah, apparently Seath created, or discovered, a thing called the Primordial Crystal. So if we want to have any chance of killing him, we gots to smash it. Outside the fog door here, we find a single giant golden crystal golem wandering about. We kill it, and they drop another NPC, Sieglinde.
Oh, have you seen my father?
If you couldn't tell, she's the daughter of our dear Onion Boy. Of course, we have seen him plenty of times, and we tell her just so. I'm not sure why she sounds like she's 5, but yeah. You know, as I write this, I feel the same way talking about this place as I feel when playing through it. I want to like it, I want to have fun with it, but good lord is it taking forever. At least the crystal caves are big and pretty looking. Like I said, the visuals are great from top to bottom. But like the Archives, this place also has its annoyances. Invisible bridges for one thing, but to be fair, they are pretty wide and are visibly shown through falling crystals hitting them, so that's not too bad. But hey look, it's our old friend Slanted Geometry. Ah yes, giant clams. Every sorcerer's favorite familiar. Yeah, no, what? Well, finally, at long last, we make it to the Primordial Crystal, and Seath is understandably a tad bit mad at us for disturbing it. Well, obviously, to start the fight off, you have to destroy the crystal before you can even hurt Seath, and thankfully, it's about as sturdy as my self-esteem. I gotta say, the music for this fight is really bizarre, but fits Seath perfectly. A dragon that's gone completely insane, conducting all sorts of horrific experiments on people and delving into knowledge best left unknown, all for the goal of attaining immortality. And good lord, that is one big boy! I'm pretty sure Seath is the physically largest boss we've fought so far. He barely fits in his own arena. Most of his attacks are just mad flails with his tentacles. Why does he have tentacles? Yeah, whatever. Blasting lasers blindly around him, and of course, the big crystal explosion thingy from before. The crystals his attacks leave behind also inflict curse damage when walking through them, so there's the ever-present threat of just being gibbed by an instant kill mechanic when you're fighting him. Also, if you cut off the tip of his most rear tentacle tail thing, you get the Moonlight Greatsword. An item I wasn't going to use, but nonetheless wanted because again, I'm weird like that, and died 2 times trying to get it. Without going for the sword, the fight is fairly easy, I'd say. The biggest threat is dying from curse damage, which does suck, but most of his attacks can miss you if you just attack him by ducking in and out. I, meanwhile, being the paragon of brain that I am, elected to just slap on Sunlight Blade and return to Monkey, charging in and swinging my sword like a heavily armed, divinely empowered, pissed off gorilla. Which worked, to be fair, but I misjudged how much curse damage I could take and got what I deserved. Thankfully though, I got the third Lord Soul afterwards, so apparently it still counted. I'll take it. I'm not really sure if I'd call this a good boss, since it's not that hard, but much like the archives, I gotta at least give points for the scale. Or should I say, the lack of them. Anyway, with the third Lord Soul firmly in our grasp, I decide to give one last farewell to Logan.
Who are you? Stay clear of my work. Curses upon you. How dare you disturb me?
Logan? You feeling okay, buddy? I guess he's busy. We'll just come back later then. You know, before we leave, I'm curious what's in that room where we first fought Seth now that he's dead, so let's... God fucking damn it, again? I didn't really talk about Logan all that much, admittedly, but to give a brief summary, well, he didn't deserve this, that's for sure. Like Laurentius, he liked to teach you and generally seemed like he had a good head on his shoulders, even if apparently his methods and aversion to taboos earned him an unfavorable reputation in his homeland. Also, Griggs may have been sent to keep an eye on him, or kill him, I'm not sure, but that's one theory that's floating around. He only wanted to gain the knowledge locked away in the archives, not for power or control, but just for the sake of curiosity. And, well, whatever was in here, it led him to the exact same fate that befell Seth. Or maybe it was the fact that he achieved his goal. He had limitless knowledge at his fingertips, and now, what else was there? He had everything he wanted, but maybe that wasn't enough. Or maybe the pursuit of it was all the purpose he had left. Either way, he's gone too. Just another body added to the pile. I don't think he even went hollow. His body isn't decayed or anemic looking. He just lost his mind, somehow, some way. One by one, everyone we know is either dying, going hollow, or betraying us. What the hell is happening? Here, Frampt, take your goddamn Lord Soul. One more to go. And we already know where we're going, so back down to the Demon Ruins. First, we can't even get to the Demon Ruins because of the lava flow coming from this thing, Ceaseless Discharge, whose name I shall not be making any jokes about, who just sorta stands there, looming over what seems to be the grave of a Witch of Izalith, staring almost motionless. They don't become hostile until we mess with the body, which we do because I'm just on a roll with being a horrible person today. And trying to fight them head on is ill-advised, so we run back to the fog door of the arena, wait for it to approach, and when it reaches us, it'll leap forward and grab onto the ledge. Then all we have to do is knock it off. I don't feel good about that one, but it's hard for me to feel good about anything right now. Anyway, with our path opened, the Demon Ruins can now be accessed. And good lord, that is a lot of Capra demons. The copy-pasting of enemies gets especially blatant here, with these former boss demons just standing there, almost in neat rows. I don't know why, but just seeing the Capra demons lined up like this just makes me depressed when coming here. Fortunately, that depression is interrupted by this. Yeah, watch your step around this part here. Oh hey, Kirk's back. Remember him? And now, fat, fire-breathing demon statues and another slightly bigger Taurus demon. I think I know why this part kind of depresses me. The Capras and Taurus demons aren't even new. There's just more of them now. That's it. Well, and giant centipedes, I think. So that's kind of neat. And just because I'm extra paranoid, I decide to give those sunlight maggots another piece of my mind. Through the fog door here, and it's just the stray demon, but now it's on fire. This isn't even worth talking about. It's a complete filler boss. Let's move on. More of those demon statues, and a lot more of those demon statues. This is becoming concerning. And would you look at that? An elevator that goes from the Demon Ruins all the way back up to Quilag's domain. That is pretty nice, gotta say. Right after that is another fog door, and you know it's a boss door because you can see summon signs surrounding it. Oh god, Solaire! Yes, I need some jolly cooperation right now. Thank you. At least you're still alive, and Onion Boy, wherever he ran off to. But anyway, yes, time to cooperate some poor fucker into the dirt. Let's go. Well, this thing looks metal as hell, even though I'm having trouble seeing where it starts and where it ends. Most of its arena is lava, which can vaporize you in seconds, a fact I very quickly remind myself of. Oh! Right. Death hurts. Lava bad. Sometimes I amaze myself with how often I forget the most primal of lessons humanity ever taught itself. Fire hot, ow! Unless your name is Solaire, apparently. Goddamn, Solaire, you just do not give a fuck, do you? In any case, the demon isn't that hard, though if you blast off its arm, head, other head, I think, it turns into a smaller centipede that charges you. Thankfully, lightning continues to solve all my problems, and we get the orange charred ring, which drastically reduces the damage we take from lava. And I mean drastically, like it fucking tickles now. Which lets us enter the next part of the ruins without being reduced to crispy bacon. And around the corner, sitting by the bonfire, is Solaire. Oh, thank God. Buddy, let me tell you, I have been having the shittiest time lately, and I have never been happier to see.
Why? Why?
What?
After all this searching, I still cannot find it.
No. No. I'm not you two, man. Please not you two. Look, I get it. Shit sucks right now. It's bad, but we're gonna make it, okay? We're gonna make it. We're gonna get through to the end together, all right? Just don't go. Okay? Just don't go. Okay, that got heavy. So, what's up next? Oh. Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother with the pretenses. Lost Izalith fucking sucks. Everyone knows it sucks. It's so well known that I spoiled it 1,000 years ago in the intro, and I guarantee not a single one of you were surprised. Looking at this place now just makes me sad. It's a monument to lost potential. A reminder of what could have been and went criminally underrealized. I mentioned that Dark Souls started getting a troubled, rushed development toward the end. It's not exactly clear where that started and what areas were actually hurt by it, but Lost Izalith was absolutely one of them. Confirmed by the man himself, this place ended up not even close to its full vision. Behold, the flourishing fields of undead dragon asses, placed with about as much care and cohesion as a bad custom Half-Life map, or that one bit with all the head crabs and hunt down the freemen. They're barely even a threat. You can run right past most of them, and even the ones that are in your way will just kill each other trying to get to you. I did literally nothing here. That one just died to the other's attacks. You can't make this shit up. And yet, I still somehow managed to get myself killed by one of them. I don't even know what happened there. At least I can take some solace in knowing I wasn't the only one. Even the lava, the most consistent level hazard between us and our end goal, isn't even a hazard because of our new ring. Yeah, it'll do constant chip damage to you, but that doesn't mean shit to your 1 billion health and 20 plus 5 Estus flasks. And that constant burning noise is making me want to commit great acts of violence. Oh, by the way, these demon statues are amazing. They have one attack and it locks them in place, sometimes facing one direction. Their one method of doing harm to you makes it easier to kill them. And oh my God, how many of them are there? You know, for all my problems with the Duke's archives, at least the endless army of crystal soldiers were placed in actual formations. Oh, sweet Christ, a new enemy, thank you. I have no idea what I'm looking at, but you know what, I'll take it. Oh, hi, Kirk. Bye, Kirk. It's hard for me to even stay comedically mad at this. It just makes me depressed. I mean, look at this place. This looks awesome. This should have been a fantastic area, and yet, here we are. The only decent thing I can say about this place is that we at least meet our onion boy again. Of course, it then took me an embarrassing amount of time to realize where he was. Siegmeyer finally offers to pay his debt to you by sacrificing himself so you can escape the group of Chaos Eaters below. Thankfully though, if you find your way down below and kill all but one of them, you can make sure he doesn't die and get the final leg of his quest. Not that I think he needed the help, to be honest. Jesus! Are you absolutely certain you ever needed my help at any point at all, Siegmeyer? Jesus, fuck, man, that damage was nuts! Siegmeyer, once again, thanks you for helping him and decides to fall asleep, standing up, in a pool of poison. I'm sure he'll be fine. And before we finish up here, we have one last thing to check up on. We make our way up the roots, past this Demon Titanite statue, kill the Sunlight Maggots a third time because I am nothing if not thorough at this point. And...
was it all a lie? Have I done this all for nothing?
We find Solaire, alive, in the shortcut, and believe it or not, we've saved him. If we had not come down this passageway before now and killed those Sunlight Maggots, Solaire would be here, controlled by one, having lost his mind entirely, unable to recognize us, and forcing us to defend ourselves. This was the end of Solaire's story for many, many people's playthroughs, until the way to save him was discovered. Yet, as you can see, he's still broken. Alive, but questioning his entire reason for being here, for going on this journey to begin with. That naive and jovial attitude is gone. The bleakness of the world finally caught up to him. Still, at least he's safe. He won't die here. For now, we have a job to finish. And I don't even need to tell you what's next, do I? You knew this was coming. We all did. It's nearly impossible to make a video talking about Dark Souls 1 without mentioning it. And really, after 12 years and thousands of other videos, there's nothing left to say that hasn't already been said at least 100 times over. Adding on to it now would just be me taking my turn to beat the bloody mess that may have at one point been a dead horse, so there's really not much point in me doing it. I'm gonna do it anyway. Now, that may seem unnecessary and overdone after all this time, and you would have a point in saying that, but in my defense, this thing fucking deserves it! Where to even begin with this? The Bed of Chaos doesn't have just one thing that makes it bad, it's the whole thing. It's a cavalcade of terrible that all comes together into one gigantic explosion of stupid. Technically it has 3 phases, although I don't think the first one counts. Oh, how threatened I feel. You know how I said Sen's Fortress could have done some real cheap death stuff and been justified? Well, it certainly feels like this boss is trying to make up for that. Floor tiles falling away with no warning suddenly make these ineffective attacks very effective, and we're forced to rely on the utterly broken jumping mechanic, which only just barely works. I mean, barely. I had to be on the very last pixel of that ledge to make that jump. It is possible to roll dodge your way through those branch attacks, but that involves me betting on this thing's hitboxes behaving consistently, so I'll take my chances with the leap of faith, thanks. During its last phase, however, is when things get their most bullshit. It starts spewing up these pillars of fire that can just appear from anywhere, and doing slam attacks that go off the fucking screen so you can't see them. Oh, but don't worry, we don't have to fight this thing. We just have to run through the middle of all this bullshit and make one last jump onto a curved branch at its center. Oh, and the Bed of Chaos hasn't stopped madly flailing either, and those attacks are wide, so good luck. And even if you do manage to get past them, you have to land that jump and not accidentally roll off. If you don't just get smacked out of the air, that is. And while you're breaking your way to the last weak point, it's still summoning these damn fire pillars that now you can only just barely dodge. Finally, you smack the bug thingy at its center, and that's it. You killed it. That's the boss fight, a glorified death run map. The only non-actively hostile thing I can say about this mistake is that it's the only boss to have fucking checkpoints, because even the devs knew this thing was awful and wanted the player to get past it as quickly as possible. I do not blame them. This thing is not only the worst boss in all of Dark Souls, but it's a top contender for one of the worst bosses of all time. And that's Lost Izalith. Horrible map design, horrible enemy variety, eye-straining color palette and lighting, all capped off with a boss so egregiously terrible that I couldn't even make me complaining about it funny. This whole area is the #1 reason I tend to stop my Dark Souls runs around Anor Londo, because I always have such a good time and always enjoy revisiting it up to that point, but know that eventually I'll have to have those good times crushed and ground into dust by this. I said it before, I'll say it again. Miyazaki and likely the entire Dark Souls team to this day regrets Lost Izalith and how it turned out. It was the result of mismanaged time, resources, and a tight deadline. And boy, oh boy, does it show. I couldn't even have fun with this. I was actually excited to talk about Lost Izalith and tear it to pieces, but now I'm just fucking depressed and angry. The planetary amounts of lost potential this place represents fucking eats at me every time I go back to it. And what makes it worse is for my first time through, this was my second to last experience with Dark Souls as a whole. I went into the final battle hot off the heels of this place, and if I were to follow it faithfully, I'd be ruining the ride for myself and all of you. So you know what? No, fuck it. We're not ending on such a terrible, depressing note. I'm taking a detour. This completely screws up the pacing of the script, but I don't care. We're not leaving it off like this. Strap in, kids. We're going back in time. Wait a minute. This isn't where I left my time machine. Welcome to the DLC, everyone.
Let's go!
So Artorias of the Abyss was the first and only major expansion released for Dark Souls 1. As you may have guessed, it follows the events of Knight Artorias' original battle against the Awakened Abyss, and the resulting aftermath of his defeat. It's also got a bit of an odd quest to start it. First, you go to where we encounter the Hydra in Darkroot, kill it, reset the area, find this golden golem, kill it. It drops a woman named Princess Dusk. Dusk asks you to help her kingdom and then pieces out. Then you go to the entrance of the Grand Archives, kill the specific golem who's just off moping in the corner for some reason, take the broken medallion they drop, head back to the place where you met Dusk, and get yoinked through a portal. And dear friends, raise your hands to the sky and praise the sun, because that quality and passion of Dark Souls is back in force. This expansion is leagues better than the vast majority of the endgame, likely because the team was less pressed for time and could focus on making this relatively brief experience as good as possible. It's also arguably harder than just about all of Dark Souls. See, Artorias of the Abyss is one of those expansions that assumes you've played the original game to death, and as such, feels no remorse in tightening its gloves and swinging for the fences. It's got a total of 4 bosses, each one much harder than all the bosses in the Dark Souls endgame and most of the others in general. While each previous boss had a certain rhythm they each shared to some extent and certain tells for when they were about to attack, these ones have completely different paces compared to that, and it certainly fucked me up several times in my first time through. Hell, it still served my own ass to me raw. Even some of the basic enemies you encounter have motions and attacks specifically designed to throw you off. And nowhere is that more prevalent than the poster child for the entire DLC. You know, I wasn't going to go in depth for the DLC section since this video has already taken long enough, but I had to for Sir Artorias. It's just respectful, really. You don't fight Artorias as he was in his prime, you fight him right after he fell battling the Abyss, little more than a hollowed out corpse being puppeted around by the darkness he sought to contain. But there's clearly more than a bit of the old him in there as he starts doing this shit. Ow. So you know how we went back in time? Well, I'm thinking so did Artorias, cause this motherfucker stumbled in from Dark Souls 3. His moveset is so varied and quick, way more so than any other boss in the entire game, with a few variations on moves that are, again, meant to trip up your momentum. All the bosses in this DLC are leagues more aggressive than anything else that came before, and Artorias is the king among them. He will not give you a second to catch your breath unless you really gain some distance, and will make you fight for those small moments to heal yourself. Yes, for me, Artorias was harder than the actual final boss of the DLC, Manus, Father of the Abyss. Oh, you have no idea how badly I want to start gushing about the lore this whole expansion added, but I promised myself I wouldn't. I'll just say that Artorias, the legend himself, is the highlight of the entire DLC for me. The boss from it that I remember the most, and the one that still gives me the most trouble to this day. The devs knew they had to give this guy all the love they possibly could, and boy, did they not disappoint. You are fighting a broken, hollowed out legend, and does it sure feel like it. There's so much more I want to say about the DLC. I love how Ulasil is visibly sinking into the abyss with all the architecture slanted toward the big gaping opening at its center. I love how the deeper you go, the more you start seeing this abyssal goop all over the floor as you approach the center of the corruption. I love the small details from dialogue we get that further hint at the true story of Dark Souls, how the abyss began to spread, and the nature of what the abyss could potentially be. I love this cheeky fucker. I love this big fucker. I love how you find a young Seth, and if you rescue them and fight them later, you get a different cutscene as they recognize you, and oh god damn it, it breaks my heart. I could keep going, but I think you get the point, and I'll be going into much more detail about this in my follow-up video, whenever that happens. If all the latter half of Dark Souls had this kind of energy, I can't imagine how fantastic it could have been. Mismanaged time, resources, and a tight deadline choked the life out of it. But I'm at least very happy that some of it got focused back into this. If I had to imagine, part of the reason they made this DLC at all was probably because they knew the latter half of Dark Souls was so lacking, and collectively wanted to rectify that. You don't get a game like Dark Souls from a team that didn't have its heart in it. And for my recorded playthrough, this was a refreshing renewal of quality and a sudden challenge that I desperately needed approaching the final parts. But at least we don't have much longer to go. So I think it's time we get back on track.
Dear Father.
Throughout our journey, we've met and befriended many people, and nearly every single one of them are gone. Turned hollow, gone mad, or cut down in vengeance. The Crestfallen Knight, Laurentius, Rhea, Vince and Nico, Lautrec, Logan, and now Siegmeyer, dead on the beach of Ash Lake, put down by his own daughter, to stop his hollowing. No story we've come across has ended happily. The world we're fighting so hard to restore is beyond hope, and the people we tried our best to save all fell in the end. Standing here at the final hurdle, we ask ourselves, after losing so much, what's left to even fight for? Why are we here? To save a world beyond saving? A world that hated us and never wanted us at all? For the honor and memories of those who forgot even themselves in the end? There's nothing left. No reason to keep going. We don't walk into this final arena with hope in our hearts and triumph in our wake. We walk into it feeling like the scum of the earth, like a walking corpse barely grasping at what small illusion of life it has left, much like the world itself. We never should have been here. We should have died, like everyone else we cared about. Even as grand and impressive as the kiln of the first flame looks, it hardly matters to us in the end. We don't care. We're just here to see this to the end. No other direction but forward. Pushed this way by the dying hopes and silvery words of others. Words that now ring hollow in our ears. Yet as we approach, we spot a flicker in the distance. A single mote of golden light, glowing bright and defiant against the world around it. Solaire. He made it. He got to the end. After everything you both have been through, everyone you've met and forced to see fall, here he is. It wasn't in vain. It wasn't for nothing. What does it mean to go hollow? An undead who goes hollow doesn't simply die, but loses the will to keep on living. For an undead can never truly die. But an undead with no goal can't stave off the inevitable, a creeping madness that will eventually take hold. With no craft or goal to focus their efforts on, the symptoms accelerate and soon claim their minds. It robs them of their free will, their thoughts, their memories, sometimes little pieces at a time. But it always ends the same way. An unliving corpse, cursed to wander the world for eternity. Empty and hollow. Solaire nearly suffered that same fate. After failing to find his own sun, his own light, Solaire began to go mad in Lost Izalith, talking to himself and barely registering your presence. Had we left him as he was, it wouldn't have even mattered if he'd been possessed by the sunlight maggot and forced to fight us, because he would have gone hollow, just like the rest. With no goal left to fight for, and the emptiness of the world catching up to him, he nearly drowned in it. The powerful, jovial hero would have been brought to a tragic, pathetic end. But he did find a reason to keep going. Something or someone to fight for. You. Want to know how I know? Because after the entire journey you and Solaire shared, after the many times you fought together, after you saved him from a terrible end and he stands at the kiln, what does he do? Does he charge in, defeat Lord Gwyn in glorious combat, sacrifice himself to restore the first flame, and become the very son he sought all this time? No. He walks off to the side, puts down his summon signature, and he waits to fight alongside you one last time. This is Gwyn, or was Gwyn, the one you've been told about all this time, the towering figure depicted in statues, spoken of like a hero and a god among the gods. This is all that remains of him, a maddened corpse, hollowed to the core, with mere echoes of his once great power. The man who once struck down the stone dragons with bolts of lightning and ushered in the Age of Fire can now barely manage a single blast of flame. Almost all of his attacks can be parried, and if done right, this fight can be won with barely any dodging needed. There's no grace or majesty in how he swings that fiery sword, only desperate and thoughtless aggression. And this isn't a first phase trick, and his true power is revealed after that health bar vanishes. When he dies, he just dies. That's it. No second coming, no big reveal, just another body added to the pile. This is the man you were meant to succeed, the one who sacrificed countless lives, even his own, to prolong the Age of Fire, an age that may have very well been doomed to fade from the start. All of this may have been nothing but a prolonged, dying gasp of an already dead world. Prophecy, fate, this was never about a prophecy or achieving our destiny. This was a desperate attempt by a fearful few, cowering from the dark, to restore a world that has been long, long lost. Everywhere in this game is crumbling and decayed. Who knows how long this has gone on? You were never a chosen undead. There were probably countless before you, and maybe countless more will come after. Solaire himself said it, right at the beginning of our journey.
The flow of time itself is convoluted, with heroes centuries old phasing in and out.
The world is in such shambles that time itself has been corrupted and warped. Who truly knows how many times this exact scenario has played out? Every ghost we see, just another undead playing out the same events over and over and over and over and over again. And for what? This hollow, warped, dead world that should have died long ago to hopelessly grasp at a fading age that will never come back? Defeating Gwyn carries no weight, no triumphant victory, or anything like that. Sure, he can kill you. Sure, he can put out the damage. But you'll always come back. You'll keep getting up and throwing yourself at him, just like you've done to every other boss in this game. You die, you get up, you die again, and you get right the fuck back up again. It's a cycle, not unlike the cycle the world of Lordran has trapped itself in. The actions of a fearful Gwyn unknowingly doomed thousands to endlessly repeat this same misery again and again, in the vain hopes of finding the one hero who can finally end it, and restore the flames forever. In a way, it's a beautiful tragedy. Those left with the power to guide the world instead turn it toward this desperate ploy to lead those foolish enough to fight for them along the same path, to serve as little more than kindling to keep that first flame burning. Maybe it'll end with you. Maybe it won't. Who really knows? Maybe this really is the final time, the one that'll end it all. Throughout all of Dark Souls and the adventure you took, it asked that unspoken question, whether or not this world deserved to be saved, if it even could be saved. So, what do? Do you cast your hope to those who will come after, that maybe they will find a way to break this curse and undo it all? Or do you let it fade, and walk quietly into the darkness, toward whatever it may bring? We don't really know what comes after our choice. All we can do is hope we made the right one. Dark Souls is a game that I hold dear to my heart. One that made me appreciate storytelling and gaming on a whole other level when I played it first. And one that I still hold a monumental amount of respect for all these years later. But sadly, I have to admit that not all of it aged as well as I thought it did. Half of this game is one of the most finely crafted, expertly paced, and beautifully dark games I've ever played. And the other half is a slow, agonizing descent into outright mediocrity and disappointment. It ends on a tragic note, a well-done one at that, and its expansion adds some much-needed love and passion back into its endgame, but it doesn't make the thought of what could have been sting any less. I stopped my playthroughs around Anor Londo not just because I hate Lost Izalith or whatever, but because reaching the endgame reminds me that this game wasn't nearly the vision it could have been. What would this game have been had the polish of the first half been carried over into its latter half is a question that eats at me every time I replay it. And yet, despite all of that, despite all the problems and aspects that have not aged well, despite the slow descent into mediocrity, despite Lost Izalith and the Bed of Chaos, I can't bring myself to dislike this game. Not even close. It's not perfect. Hell, far from it. But where it's good, it's really, really damn good. It became such a phenomenon, not just for one reason, but for many reasons. Ones that I've only come to appreciate that much more as I grew older. There's beauty in its simplicity, and even if it's not as well polished as its successors, it still has a dark, twisted charm and beauty that hasn't been captured again. FromSoft has made better games since, but for me, Dark Souls has and will always remain one of my favorites. There's something it does that no other game in history has done before and has ever done since. And nothing is ever going to change that. Holy shit! I'm alive. Thank you everyone very much for watching what is without a doubt my most ambitious video to date. This one was rough to make, so if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate a like and a comment to help the channel grow. And if you'd like to stick around, be sure to subscribe and do the whole bell thingy. For those interested, my Patreon page has recently gotten a major overhaul and has brand new tiers of rewards for those who want to support the channel, so check that out. I do want to keep doing this style of video, and direct support in that way helps a lot, so do check that out if you have the time. If you want to keep up to date with me and everything I do, I have a Discord server that is open to everyone, and I stream over on Twitch every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 3 p.m. Central US time. Thank you again for sticking around, everyone, and as always, y'all have a lovely evening, and I'll see you next time.